All right, thanks everybody for joining us for our regular council meeting for July 8th, 2026. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging that the land on which we're gathered is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, keepers of this land from time immemorial. We have a couple of proclamations. I'll start with the July 18th proclamation is Courtenay's first annual Hello Neighbor Day. Strong community start with simple neighborly connections that foster belonging and well-being. This year's celebration aligns with the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association's Everyone Outside Together campaign, encouraging people across Canada to step outside and connect with their communities. Whether it's a friendly greeting, sharing a resource, or spending time together in shared spaces, small acts can make a big difference. I encourage everyone to take part on July 18th to build a friendlier, safer, and more connected Courtenay. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just wanted to announce that it's National Drowning Prevention Week in the city of Courtenay, July 19th to 25th. And it reminds us that drowning is preventable and water safety is everyone's responsibility. As a community surrounded by rivers, lakes, and ocean waters, we encourage residents to enjoy these spaces safely and responsibly. Simple actions such as supervising children, wearing a life jacket, and avoiding alcohol around water can save lives. And we thank the Life Saving Society for its ongoing work to promote water safety, education, and drowning prevention.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I think if people have been listening to the news over the past couple of weeks, now is a great time to be making that awareness. So thanks so much for reading that out for us. We have our regular council meetings from June 24th, 2026. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept those unanimously and go on to the committee of the whole minutes from June 17th. Excellent. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept those unanimously as well, and we'll move into delegations. And so if you'd like to approach the podium, I'll turn on the mic while you're going over there, I think. There we go. It's turned on. Oh, yes. My apologies, Councillor Cole Hamilton. I have written down.
No problem. With respect to the delegation, I am, as a director of the Island Corridor Foundation, I do have to declare a conflict of interest, so I'll just recuse myself for the duration.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and you'll just have to wait till he's out the door, and then we'll call him back once the delegation's over. And with that, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Wells and City Council. My name is Doug Smith. I'm one of the co-owners of Natural Pastures Cheese Company and the operations manager. Natural Pastures Cheese is an award-winning artisan cheese producer. We make cheese, butter, yogurt, and ice cream using milk from the local farms of Comox Valley and Vancouver Island. We're a multi-million-dollar company, and we've been at 635 McPhee Avenue for over 25 years. We employ 18 people full-time, as well as we use local tradespeople and businesses. At the beginning of our business, we determined that the use of the gravel lane behind our property would be essential for our operation. Though the lane has been used by many businesses over the year, it's at that time was owned and controlled by CP Rail and the N Railroad. So we met with the regional manager at that time of the CP Rail to confirm that we would be able to use that lane. And he did allow us the use of the lane. In fact, he was quite happy that we were there to use it. And we use it mainly for milk delivery and trade access to the back of our property. And we've spent time and money to maintain that road, clear snow, brush control, and pick up garbage. It was an agreement that was mutually beneficial to both us and to the railroad. In 2025, Island Corridor Foundation sent us an email with a demand that we agree to pay $750 a month for a fee or they would block off the lane. And at one time they did block off the lane, And then they agreed to remove the barricades through the help of Mayor Wells and our MLA, Brennan Day. We've made efforts to negotiate an acceptable agreement between us and also other businesses along the section of McPhee Avenue between 5th Street and Cumberland Avenue. And we have basically been able to get nowhere. And they have now hired an Nanaimo law firm to negotiate with us as to how much they want to charge us for the use of that lane. Oops, that one went right to the end. So that's on the screen is the section that we're talking about. So what is the problem and why does it concern the city of Courtenay? We look at it as that the Island Corridor Foundation has changed their position on the use of this lane. We've been able to use the lane since the very beginning of our business, and they are now demanding money or they'll lock us out. And where that affects the city of Courtenay is ICF receive a permissive property tax exemption from the city of Courtenay. And we look at it as they're hiding behind a tax exemption and then turning around harassing us and extorting us for money to use what we've used since the time of the ENN and the CP rail. And I believe it's your largest tax exemption that you give out. And we look at it, the ICF is no longer living up to the scope of the extension. And I looked at your website, and a permissive tax exemption is a means for council to support not-for-profit organizations within the community, which further council's objectives of enhancing quality of life, economic, social, and cultural. So we look at it as they're going from a nonprofit to a profit basis. And how this has affected us is we don't have an easy way of delivering milk. If we have to use trucks unloading on McPhee Avenue, it'll become a safety hazard as well as a potential blocking traffic, both pedestrian and vehicle on McPhee Avenue. But realistically, it puts our business at risk. We went to that property with the understanding that we would be able to use that back lane. And without it, I don't think a long-term survival of our business is realistic. And it's just been a very significant financial cost to us as well as stress and hassle. And it's probably cost us over $8,000 in time and legal costs. So what would be a solution? I think that it's important that the city of Courtenay determine, is ICF adhering to the terms of their permissive tax exemption if they continue on this avenue of charging the businesses on McPhee for the use of that lane. And if they're not, I would ask that the city demand that they stop their harassment or they'll lose their tax exemption. You do have the power in this situation because it's purely up to your decision whether they get one or not. And I think long-term would be to investigate a way to make that laneway a public use. You have a precedent with the Rotary Trail on that property. And that way it would guarantee a continuation of access for the businesses. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be open to any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. I do see that there are questions. I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Doug. Yeah, I don't actually have any questions for you. You make great points, and it sounds like something that needs to be dealt with. I would more look to staff. Maybe it just comes back in a couple of weeks and we deal with it then. But looks like I need some more information from our staff about that. But thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah, and I think we had mentioned that we don't really make the decisions at the time of a delegation, but it'll come back to us for further information and where we can contemplate in a more fulsome way. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thanks for coming and providing this information and just your perspective on how this is impacting both your business currently and potentially the viability of your operations going forward. I think it's really important to hear this on the public record. And I mean, I would agree. I don't see how there is a public benefit to creating a fairly significant expense for businesses to access a laneway that you've previously had access to. And so I certainly empathize with your position there and how this is creating a real problem for you. One thing I just want to also have on the public record, because there is a lot of confusion around the ICF and how it relates to the city. And you rightly pointed out that we provide them with a tax exemption because it's considered, a public benefit to keep these lands intact and potentially use them for either the rail to come back or a trail. And that's really why that tax exemption exists, is that were we to be charging property taxes on this asset, inevitably it would need to be broken up just in order to pay for that cost. If those lands are being used to generate revenue for the nonprofit, then I think that there is a different perspective that would probably be applied. And I don't know that we have specific policy on this, but I agree that we certainly need a council decision to look at that. The other thing is I agree, I would love to see this as community space, but I also want to be clear that the city of Courtenay doesn't really have control over how the ICF uses its lands. In the years I've been on council, I've really wanted to see more public use and extension of the Rotary Trail. And there's a lot of divergent points of view on the best way to proceed. So in terms of us providing direction for the ICF on creating that community space, I think I just want to be clear, we do have very limited influence in that way. But I think you're right to point out the issue around a tax exemption on a piece of property that's being used to generate revenue from businesses nearby. So I just wanted to provide that clarification and acknowledge that you're making a good point here. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum, and maybe just for feedback, I have passed that on previously to staff as well. So so that's likely to come back to us. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I won't bring up the situation or the name, but there was a situation a few years ago with a tax exemption that was similar. This was not even with the city of Courtenay, it was somewhere else, but the organization had sort of reneged on the public benefit piece. And so we were able to kind of hold them to that and make sure that that was reinstated. So I'm not saying that that's the case here. It would have to be looked at, and we'd have to get information from staff to be able to make that decision. But I think you make a good point that those, the language that we have around tax exemptions, we do need to hold accountable to that. I was curious about the 7 businesses that are in your presentation. Are they all being asked to provide $750 a month?
I believe it varied by business.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
So not even
kind of
consistent.
speaking for our company, but I'm also bringing up forward an issue that affects more companies than ourselves. I believe there was a variation between maybe 500 and 750, but I'm not sure what every person was.
And I guess the ICF was deciding, maybe based on use of that alley or whatever, what they were wanting to charge people. And I guess in terms of the maintenance and things that you provide and the other businesses provide, I mean, those would be things that ICF would have to pay for if, if you were. Yeah, or they could just leave it, I guess, but yeah, with unmaintained.
Well, we as a company, and I know that, say, Done Right Towing, have done a lot of maintaining it, of the sections that we use, which is basically from 5th Street to 8th Street or to the E Free Church. There's an alleyway there.
Right.
We've put gravel on the road. It's probably been the biggest expense. We've plowed snow and heavy snowfall back when there was heavy snowfalls. But garbage pickup is quite routine. So we look after it as best we can and the sections that we use.
Okay, well, that's great. That gives me a bit of an idea about what's happening there and the businesses that are impacted. Thanks.
Yeah, and maybe just to articulate that one slide where it said, here's the businesses that have been contacted, but then there was a little caveat that some haven't been. And so when I walked that street, some had gotten emails, some hadn't, and it was really a bit of a dog's breakfast. And then, so it's not, hasn't been necessarily that straightforward.
And there are some residences in there as well, not just businesses. So
yeah,
and I don't think they were contacted.
Yeah, and I think, and some of the businesses don't have an access off the laneway. They only have an access off McPhee and stuff. So yes, there was, it was just a variety of things. But even businesses who had access didn't necessarily mean they got an email. So, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Smith, I just want to thank you for the service your business provides, including supplying me with cheese on a regular basis. I'm one of your customers, and I really enjoy what you produce.
Thank you.
And I've actually been to your establishment when there was some sort of a promotional event happening there for food produced on Vancouver Island, and I think you're a real asset to the community. I also live in the neighborhood, so I walk past on a regular basis, and I'd love to see it developed in that fashion. I would point out that council in the past has contemplated engagement with the Island Corridor Foundation in relation to the land along 5th and Menzies, which potentially would have been part of the McPhee Meadows area. And we also work with the Island Corridor Foundation in relation to issues that come up. So apart from the tax exemption, I think we do have some leverage in a relationship with them, and I'd be very happy to have this council and when we reconvene to take some action that would support you and the fellow businesses that are being extorted in an unwarranted and unseemly manner, I would say. So thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we should be a little cautious on how we characterize the Island Corridor Foundation. Just just around the table here, Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, I'll withdraw the word extorted and say that I think it's a poor business practice to pressure merchants in this way when you change a relationship that has been established for a significant amount of time, and I would hope that we could prevail upon the Island Corridor Foundation to work in a more collaborative way to come up with a solution. And there may be something that the city can do in relation to an arrangement with the land that would help facilitate that.
Thanks for clarifying that. And I think that's been the real thought process through this whole thing. And I think that's what's led to this delegation is there's been these discussions and just trying to really get to the table to have these collaborative agreements brought forward. Councillor Frisch.
I want to speak first, just because I'm trying to talk about emotions.
Okay. wanna
Yeah,
turn your
thanks,
mic off
Mayor.
and back.
And thanks for being here. You articulated a point, an issue that is top of mind for me all the time, which is our permissive tax exemption. And it's timely because we'll be considering permissive tax exemptions in the coming weeks for the upcoming year. So another really important data point. So thank you for bringing that forward. I also, without repeating the comments that I do support from the rest of my colleagues, just wanting to articulate this, I think, is a really beautiful example of what happens when community comes together. And you shared that in your slide, and seeing that you're meeting regularly and listening to each other's concerns and finding ways to collaborate. Also wanted to share my appreciation to the mayor and our MLA for working collaboratively with you. And similar to Councillor Hillian, beyond the permissive tax exemption piece, we also, and you've articulated that your business has participated in a lot of our city initiatives and ICF initiatives around planning for the use of the area in the neighborhood. Our OCP really does articulate our vision for the McPhee corridor. And I think so there is actually a direct tie for us to somehow be involved in your challenges that you're experiencing, because we do have a very clear vision for the McPhee corridor. And with the upcoming DVLAP as well, our downtown vitalization local area plan and the work at the Harmston Park, it's all connected, right? So I did want to just share my thanks to you and the group for continuing to meet and for involving the mayor and staff. And yeah, appreciative of you coming forward today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Appreciate that, Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. It sounds like most of council is interested in moving forward with something on this subject, and I know it would maybe take a 2/3 majority vote to consider this at today's meeting. My thinking is that why wait 2 weeks to ask staff to maybe give us some information on how they think we might be able to proceed to address the issue. So with that, I'd move that council consider a motion today about this delegation.
Okay, it's been seconded. Any comments? I'll read. Hang on one second. Well, actually, you're both gonna have a comment. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna let Councillor Moran go and then
Just
Councillor.
clarification
Yeah.
of the motion. So right now you're just asking us to consider
A
your,
motion.
because we need 2/3 to consider it. Okay.
That was your question? Okay,
My
Your
question
question?
was in the substance of what we might want to bring forward. So maybe I'll wait until this vote is done.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to speak to it now if
We have
It
to
helps.
suspend the rules first.
that's correct.
Won't actually suspend the rules and then make the motion, but we can do it this way. Yeah.
This is probably the proper way, or? Exactly. All right, we're learning how to do all this up properly just in time. All right, so we'll call the vote then. All those in favor of considering? And any opposed? And so that does pass with a supermajority. And back to you, Councillor Frisch, for your motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I'll move that staff prepare a report for council on how the city might proceed to help the businesses adjacent to the ICF corridor on McPhee.
Okay. All right, and Councillor.
Yeah, thanks.
Jolicoeur?
Yeah, my question is related to the issue that the delegation brought forward. This question is to staff, given the timing of our upcoming PTE. Is this something that's realistic that could be done to support that discussion in the coming weeks?
Through the mayor to Councilor Jolicoeur, I'm not sure they have a 10-year exemption right now.
Oh, okay.
That's in place. We have communicated to the ICF that should they enter into leases, they are to advise us, and finance staff are in that process right now. So we will advise council during the PTE receipt, would be on the Mr. Langmar, August 25th meeting, will be the introduction of 2027 PTEs. Now, just to remind council, this has a 10-year exemption, but it's on the holder of the exemption to advise us if they have lands that are revenue generating. So it should not be an issue. And I've been talking to the Director of Finance about this because we're aware of issues that have been ongoing for the last while.
All right, I don't see any further questions. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, well, there you go. I know I did say we don't necessarily consider things on the day. Don't get any ideas, Mr. Greaves, on your delegation, but I just want to thank you for your presentation. And again, you're reaching out and being very collaborative through this process. But as I mentioned before, we do want to make sure everybody's working together. So we want to make sure the language we use is not necessarily confrontational. So that's the only bit that I did mention there. But moving forward, we'll have a report coming back to us, and obviously we'll be in contact. So with that, thanks so much for your presentation today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. All right, and with that, we're just going to let Councillor Cole Hamilton come back in, but Mr. Grieve, if you'd like to approach the podium, you're up next. With 10 minutes, I just want to reiterate, 10 minutes. Did you see that Doug was able to get it done, I think, in 7? So
not guilty, Your Honor.
All right, we'll start the clock now.
Okay, apparently I've got a few slides.
You got the clicker?
There we go. I guess some of you know me from my involvement as a colleague at the regional district and my involvement with the mayor on a couple of nonprofits in the Comox Valley. But right now, imagine my wife's surprised when I came home last November and announced I got elected the president of the Comox Valley exhibition when I'm supposed to be pulling back. This is me pulling back. Anyway, we have we've got a new exhibition board this year, and we're out promoting it in the public sphere, addressing councils today in Courtenay and Comox, as well as the Rotary clubs. So what is CVEX? Well, it's an agricultural organization in the Comox Valley. It goes back 172 years. So in 1874, the exhibition became, I think, the third registered society in the province of BC. So we go way back. What happened was over the years, we've kept agriculture alive, and the exhibition has a lot of friends around the valley, especially in the farmers and producers. I'm here to basically bring the good news that we're here to bring the growers and the markets and the families back into knowing where the food comes from. And it has never been a more important time than right now to have agricultural security. This is a picture in Lewis Park back at the turn of the century, as I say on there. I think it's not 1625. That must be the picture number. Anyway, you can see that the Lewis Park was the original home of agriculture in the Comox Valley. That's where the agricultural hall was, and that's where the exhibition was held. A little factoid is that that we bought the Lewis Park from the Lewis family, and in 1927 we gave it to Courtenay on a 100-year lease. So I'd expect your legal team to be looking towards dealing with our legal team in the next couple of years to renew that lease. I'm sure that's probably old news. Probably not so much anymore, but here's a picture from the Native Sons Hall, the agricultural exhibit. As you can see, all the apples and everything, and we're trying to get back to that with the new fair. I think my uncle Berkeley is there somewhere with his vest on. Something for everyone. Yep. We are just opening up our portal, web portal. It's going live yesterday, I think. And although it's not totally complete, but you'll be able to see what's going on in the fair, buy tickets for the fair, and also to enter your sunflowers or your apple pies or whatever online, which is a little modern twist. Home and Garden Show. Yeah, as you know, we have a static display in the curling rink every year, and it's always been very well attended. We're hoping that with the ease of registering now, that we'll even get more exhibitors in the static exhibit. Reasons to participate, showcase your skills, celebrate hard work, learn, improve, be part of tradition. It definitely is tradition. Connect with others, inspire the next generation. That's the big one for us. And a chance to win ribbons. How many categories? 439 categories. Things you can grow, 107 different things. And flowers, 61 different flowers. I'm sure we can't squash them all in the curling rink at one time, but we're going to go for it. How to register. Website is coming soon. The website is live. Get involved. Well, that's the big thing. I think what any organization right now will attest that volunteers are the hardest nut to crack. We live in an age where people don't have the same culture around volunteerism. And so sometimes you have to go, like we did with the July 1st committee, we had to go to the city and get city involvement. It was just becoming too much for volunteers to handle. Now, here's one for you. This is a real feather in the cap this year. We got selected in the Comox Valley as one of only 3 RCMP musical ride venues. We're hosting it on August the 5th for 2 shows in the lower riding ring, one at 3 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. As I say, the tickets are $20 and $10 for students and under 5 free. So the portal is open. You can scan the QR code and buy tickets today. Okay, hope to see you there at the fair. Where are we at? I think we're beyond something. This is somebody else's display now, so that's not part of me. We don't want a development permit. Thank you very much. I know how those things work. It takes forever. So anyway, I'm open to suggestions, open to comments, and looking forward to seeing all your smiling faces there for the opening ceremonies at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, the 29th of August.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And man, you did actually go faster than Doug. So kudos. I was not expecting that. So retirement is maybe treating you well. With that, I thought I had a light on, but I do want to just say it's been quite exciting talking to the new board. I know for years I worked with Mike on some stuff, and then there was some, a bit of a change, and it does seem like the board is reinvigorated, refocused, and I think that bodes well for the fair in general. So
we have a blue ribbon board. We have John Lewis, Nikki Whitaker, Fiona McQuillan, Scott Melville, who's the auctioneer. You probably met him.
Yeah.
Just a new fellow, moved here about 5 years ago from the Saanich Police or Saanich Fire Department. So he brings that fire and safety aspect to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and again, the RCMP ride, all those things. But I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Edwin. Really appreciate your energy. As you know, this year the Fall Fair had 2 other major events happening on the same day, Ribfest and the Pride event. And I'm just wondering if anything is taking place to try and give the Fall Fair a little bit of exclusivity in terms of not having to compete with other major events, given your efforts to rejuvenate it.
Well, actually, the Ribfest is on the weekend before this year, the way it falls, because it's not Labor Day weekend. So we get the very last weekend of the month. So I think the Pride event is on, but I think we're pretty clear on the rest of it, which is really great because there was a little bit of bad blood that went down there between the former CVEX board and Ribfest when they decided to move up to Cumberland. But we've, like I say, we've reached out to the Rotary clubs in the community and mended bridges and what have you. So we're thinking about, because these things are so fixed, as you know, with Ribfest, you're on a circuit. You can't get out of that circuit or you lose your spot. Well, the same is true with all the judges of the agriculture exhibits and whatever. They're also on a circuit. The fairs are on different weekends. So personally, I grew up in the Valley when the Fall Fair was in the fall. It was, I think, the second week of September. Whether we can go back to that, I'm not sure. I think it's worth exploring because I heard that, it always rains in September. Well, it doesn't always rain in September any more than it rains all June. Oh, it did.
Thanks very much. Best wishes.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, CVAX just didn't know what they were inviting, all this youthful energy you have, Edwin. reinvigorate things.
As long as I have my naps, I'm good.
I know the 4-H club used to be really involved, and I'm assuming they're probably, the 4-H clubs have probably taken a hit over the years as well in terms of involvement. But I'm curious, with all the different community gardens and school gardens, et cetera, if there's been any movement to involve any youth that way, either in volunteering or also exhibiting their produce and things like that, because we do have a very active school food programs.
Well, I think I think we're down to one 4-H club right now. So much the sign of the times, it's difficult to get volunteers, and even that the 4-H clubs are contracting at this point. So we're hoping to bring agriculture back front and center, reconnecting, like I say, the community with agriculture, with food, and where the food comes from, and building that relationship that is sort of fallen by the way. There's a lot of new people in town, as you know. So a lot of the new people don't know about the exhibition. So we don't have a midway. We're not going gung ho with anything, except for some involvement with the old fashioned fun type fair, like sack races and a lot of kid zone stuff. We were thinking that, you know, the kids, we rated very high on the records, People's Choice Awards for children's event. So we're capitalizing on that because, not to be cynical, but, you know, they're going to be towing their aunts and uncles and grandmas and parents with them. So, and they have to pay.
Right. And just a quick question just about the RCMP ride. So I'm assuming that that's going to, theoretically, if it's sold out, that's going to help bring some money into the
That
coffers.
is very serendipitous. It was a real stroke of luck this year to get that. I'd like to thank the city of Courtenay for their cooperation, because we are reaching out to Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland to borrow some bleachers from their rec departments or their to use at the event, and also reaching out to Slade Lumber and Central Builders to help with their crane trucks to put them in place. So I was just down at the park before I came here, actually, and walking and trying to figure out how we're going to put the bums in seats, as they say. So there's also that swale on top, as you know, that overlooks the ring. So the idea is to put bleachers up there as well, because you'll get still get a good view of the event. So, yeah, as many as 2,000 a show, we figure.
Excellent.
We'll see you there.
Excellent.
So at the risk of being really flaky, can I sing a song?
We have one more question or comment, and then we'll vote on it.
You cut me right off after that.
Councillor
David.
Frisch.
Yeah, no, I want to hear the song for sure. You were mentioning kids. I didn't just notice there are bouncy castles in the lakes for kids there, but I also noticed you have logging and lumberjack shows.
Well, the lumberjacks won't be there would be a rump of lumberjacks there, because Salmon Fest in Campbell River has always had an accredited event, like a world-class accredited event for logger sports. This year, they're not doing it because I think they're in Nuns Park this year. They've been moved out of their park, and so they're not on the circuit this year, but we will be having some representation, a demonstration, but it won't be an actual competition as it has been in the past.
What about chainsaw carving and like?
Chainsaw carving will be there. Yeah, we just received word that we're going to have some draft horses, some Clydesdales, doing a demonstration, which would be fantastic. We're hoping that the Pony Club will have some jumpers and maybe we'll have some barrel racers and whatever. We have a dog obedience show. We don't have the water dogs this year because they've been sold to a company in Quebec. So now I guess they're the Chien d'Or or something.
And there'll be live music, which you're gonna warm up.
Live music, as a matter of fact, we have a really great band kicking off the show that I happen to be singing in.
All right, all you.
So, okay. I just talked to Mark Mulvaney down at the Eagle about putting an ad together for the fall fair. It goes like this. It goes, Comox Valley Exhibition, boom, 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 boom. Come down to see just what you're missing, boom, 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 boom. Come back to the fair, we'll see you there. It's an old time hometown country affair. And then the dialogue, it'll be a big hit.
If you could drop that mic. Thank you. Thank you, Edwin. Really appreciate your enthusiasm today. Has been repeated time and time again. And with that, we're done with our delegations and we will move into our 5.1.1 development variance permit number 2603, 3553 Courtenay Crescent. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you, through the chair. We have the development variance permit in front of you, and Dana Beatson, our planner, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thanks for having me. This application is for development variance permit number 2603 and 2604 for 3253 and 3271 Kelowna Crescent. The applicant, Cameron Contracting, is requesting a variance to section 8.1.63 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum interior side yard setbacks from 1.5 meters to 0 meters on both properties to support the development of 8 residential units across the 2 properties, 4 units per lot. The variances are for the stairwells, 3 of them. One is a shared stairwell between the buildings, and there are 2 exterior stairwells located in the opposite side yards of each of the lots. The development is also subject to the Development Permit Area 2 for the SSMUH, a Development Permit Area for Form and Character, as well as the property at 3252 Kelowna is subject to a Steep Slopes Development Permit DPA 5, and both are being processed concurrently. Both properties are zoned small-scale multi-unit housing, designated urban residential in the OCP, and the project meets all the zoning requirements except the interior side yards for the setbacks. Staff note that the grade change on both lots requires the exterior stairs for safe access to the upper units, and the interior side yards are the only feasible location on the lots. The shared stairwells must sit at the 0 lot line to align entrances and address the site slope. The project aligns with the urban residential designation and adds 8 units that contribute positively to local housing diversity in the form of 2 bedrooms plus dens, which is more rare. A reciprocal easement is required on both land titles as a condition of the variance permit to ensure that the development, and it has to be registered prior to issuance of any development permits to recognize the shared access for the stairway that's situated between the 2 properties and buildings. Since the time of the application was advertised, there was only 1 public comment that was received, and it has been distributed to council. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Appreciate the presentation, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to ask staff about that public comment because it relates to concern about parking. And I'm just wondering if you have any information to share about the adequacy of the parking facilities if we basically have 8 separate residences there.
Right. So the zoning requires 1 parking space per dwelling unit, which it does provide in each parcel in the front yard. So there's 4 parking spaces per lot, and that is what required in the zoning. It also meets our bylaw requirements and is in line with the provincial requirements. The zoning allows 4 dwelling units, and parking is provided for each one of those units. And I just wanted to state that.
Excellent. So we're following provincial guidelines as well.
Yeah, and city requirements. There's no variances to parking.
Thanks. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I'm generally supportive of this. I guess I was just going to ask if this is kind of the most efficient way to get more units on that lot instead of maybe putting the 2 lots together and looking at it that way. I trust you looked into those sorts of things.
They were 2 separate parcels originally, and I think it's because of this, and the applicant is here. If there's other technical questions, he's able to answer, but it's because of the slope of the lot, and they are infill, very more narrow width parcels. So, and because it's sloped, and access to units needs to be provided. I think that was the engineering's best way to design the buildings as opposed to consolidating the lot.
Yeah, fair enough. With that, I'll just move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And I'll just pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to council, I just wanted to take this opportunity to highlight, council received very extensive briefings when the site's small scale multi-unit residential regulations came in, and there was some really first class work that was done by our development services department. And we have entrepreneurs who are working with the rules and the provincial guidelines that we have. And so I may be incorrect, but I think this might be our first small scale application. And so it does highlight some of the issues that we will work through as a community to accommodate this. So without people who are willing to move forward to undertake this and then working through the process, we're able to really fine tune what we're doing. So council has been really, really supportive of development approvals which provide housing in the community. And this is the first example of this happening with the new provincial regulations. So thanks. I just want to highlight that and acknowledge the work that had happened in development services department to move forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mr. Garbutt, for that. And the floodgates are open now, so schmooze everywhere, right? Really do appreciate the work. I know it was a lot to get to this point, both for staff and for the developer to really try to make this work. So really appreciate all the work put in here. And we'll move on to 5.2.1, Safe and Active School Program results and recommendations. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, through the mayor. Matt Brown, our manager of transportation services, and Sarah Rebbit from Urban Systems, as well as we have another consultant, Jamie Hillian, that's on line via Zoom. They're going to present this great program that we've been working hand in hand with the school district on. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us tonight. We're pretty excited presenting our results up to this point. So as Mr. Garbutt alluded to, we're excited to be working with Urban Systems. So we have Jamie Hillen joining us remotely. And we also have Sarah here. So they're national leaders in safe and active school programs. So we're really excited to be working with them on this project. I'm also going to acknowledge, I'm going to highlight a lot of really good points from our transportation team and operations team in general. So I acknowledge that work everyone's done.
Maybe just lean into the microphone.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. So a little bit of background. Back in February, I provided a little bit of an update to everyone. So the synopsis of what the Safe and Active School Program is, we're trying to promote active transportation for children, and also we want to get them there safely. So that's the general gist of what we're trying to accomplish here. It's a long-standing relationship between the city of Courtenay and the school district. Probably goes back at least 20 years. Back in about a year ago, we decided we wanted to refresh that program, and this is kind of highlighting a lot of that good work. So we're going to be identifying a lot of early engagement activities and some of the barriers and solutions we have moving forward. So when we started this program back in 2025, we identified 3 schools. We looked at Courtenay Elementary, Valley View, and Puntledge Park Elementary. And the reason we selected these 3 schools is we geographically wanted to have space of schools that across the city. Also, we wanted to look at service requests we're receiving from the public. So if we're hearing from them, obviously there's concerns everyone to accommodate. And also we looked at safety statistics throughout those schools across the city and selected these 3 schools. We also had a vision at the time that this would be a multi-year program. We're also looking at future schools into 26, 2027. So that was the vision for it. So early engagement. So we did a lot of engagement. Sarah, Jamie, and I, a lot of engagement. It was really exciting. We had 2 open houses. We had 2 surveys, multiple meetings with PACs. So they all know us pretty well. So a really good exercise about that. This was some early engagement results. So back in February, we talked about that. What was really important to us is to establish a baseline of how the community felt about safe and active school, so we could build on that in the future and measure our success. So we asked some questions initially, how the community felt about road safety. So as you can see on the screen there, it's a little bit small, kind of matching the engagement pieces that city's typically seeing is the Net Promoter Score. So in terms of road safety, you saw a negative 52%. Under level of comfort for active transportation, it was negative 5.2, so almost neutral. And then in terms of recommending an investment in this, we saw quite a positive, a 26% measurement on that. So going into these meetings, as we've all been in open houses, we wanted to really build trust with the community. We weren't just going to build a report that we put in the shelf but never action. So we listened to the community initially right away, and what we heard from them is they wanted a fall return to school program. So we worked with the RCMP, the school district. We had a speeder program at all the schools. We worked coordinated with the RCMP, and we also refreshed a lot of our infrastructure on the schools, making sure that was kind of initially felt right away. We heard from a lot of the communities, especially along the Lyric or busier roads where the signal timing, it was just taking too short of a period for the children to get across the school or across the road, sorry, to the school. So we implemented what's called a leading pedestrian interval. So completely puts the signal in kind of the red conditions. So it gives more time for everyone to stop and gives the children more time to cross the road. So we implement that at Lyric, Idians, Mission, and Malahat, supporting those schools. We also implemented what's called a pavement marking system for schools. So as you can see in the screen here, there's a picture of our staff deploying that. So as you enter the school zone, you have the typical sign for the school zone. So you'll see text on the road. Following that in about 3 seconds, if you're going the speed limit, which we hope everyone does, you'll be refreshed again with the symbol on the road reminding you you're in that zone. So this has been proven across North America and the world that this does improve the conditions for road safety. We also did some crosswalk improvements. So we added rapid flashers for a lot of our sidewalks or crosswalks and added actually crosswalks. So you can see here headquarters supporting Vanier. We added a crosswalk there, which is really well used. See, it's very popular. Fitzgerald and 10th, we've added one there supporting Courtenay Elementary. Malahat and Brooks supporting Isfield and Valley View, so another one. And then something we're really proud of is it's with the grand opening on Friday is the Arden Bridge active transportation, which is getting rave reviews already. So yeah,
Yes, it is. Yeah,
so, yeah. So again, connecting all those schools. So with that, what we're going to be asking today is for a 5-year capital plan to be supported by council, or at least the review of it and implementation with a follow-up in the fall. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah and Jamie now to kind of explain some of that information that we're going to be asking for.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you passing it along, and good evening, councillors and Mayor. Appreciate you giving us some time to speak today. We thought we'd just walk you through quickly. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just some of the initial high-level recommendations and that we're looking at this time and examining. First off, just to sort of frame the discussion, these are the 6 E's that we call of active school travel. Engineering is the one that we're going to talk a lot about today. That gets a lot of the attention, but we do know from active school travel research that you need to combine engineering with a lot of the encouragement, education, and enforcement, and the other components to really get that multiplying factor. So engineering is creating those safe, comfortable spaces for people to walk and bike, and families and kids especially. Education is making sure that they feel confident in using those facilities, walking and cycling programs, etc. Encouragement is regular events. We were there recently for Bike to School Month in early June, which was a well-attended event at Courtenay Elementary there, and Matt and Deva from the city were there as well to represent, so that was a nice fun event. Enforcement, as Matt alluded to earlier, we've been really working hand in hand with local RCMP to do spot enforcement campaigns and information campaigns in the return to school last fall, and we look to continue that relationship moving into the new year. And evaluation is, again, looking at all the interventions that we're doing over the years and ensuring that they're actually effective and they're getting the ROI that we want on all of these. And lastly, we also want to focus on the equity component to make sure that we're targeting a lot of the initiatives that we're undertaking towards sort of equity deserving groups. Next slide. So these are some of the suggested engineering interventions. And what I really want to highlight on a lot of these are really guided by what the community told us were priorities. They were given, the initial survey was kind of open-ended last fall in terms of priority areas that folks could identify. And from there, we were able to kind of narrow it down to some suggested, our team took it back, look at what's possible along some of those school corridors and some of the locations. came back in the spring again and kind of reflected back what the community had indicated last fall as being priorities, with some suggested or proposed interventions at that time. And they were given an opportunity, the school community, to kind of rank what they felt was the most important and the highest priority. So all these suggested engineering interventions are really a reflection of sort of community intent and desire as well. So for Courtenay Elementary School, a lot of it was around stop pavement markings and stopping compliance at some of the streets and intersections around the school itself. Installing protected cycling lanes in McPhee itself. They really felt that was important as a connector between Cumberland and 17th there. And really just enabling, a lot of kids are really interested in biking to school at Courtenay Elementary, but don't really quite feel safe given the present vehicle flows on McPhee Avenue there and vehicle volumes. They also really favored looking at a raised intersection at McPhee and 16th. That was kind of an important intersection for folks for crossing. And then looking at curb extensions and widening the sidewalks at 17th Street and Pierce Avenue intersection. So a lot of good feedback from Courtenay Elementary, some good survey results there. And next slide. Valley View was very engaged, as you can imagine, as well. We got a lot of survey results from Valley View. I think both Sarah and I we've done a lot of school travel planning and communities across the country. And as I've told Matt and Kyle and other folks before, the engagement results at Valley View and other schools were far beyond what we've seen in other ones. So a really engaged school community, very interested and passionate parents and children as well. So what we came out for that is looking at upgrading the intersection of Valley View and Mallard Drive. That was one where a lot of kids and students are crossing to that school, and felt it was important to kind of really highlight that that's an important crossing. So curb extensions, pavement markings, speed reader boards, and potentially raised crosswalk at the location. Also, Valley View Drive itself was looking at people felt that the vehicle volumes and vehicle speeds were a little bit too high for such a busy school. And so that we would look at some lane narrowing, pavement markings, and speed reader boards along that section as well, just to really let drivers know that they should be speeding or reducing their speed along that section. The Thorpe Avenue pathway crossing was also raised as a concern. That's that Greenway crossing just by Valley View there. A lot of students use that as a comfortable route. It's kind of off street to go cross and get to access the school. And so they really felt it was important to highlight the crossings at those locations. And then also expanding the school zone so that we get more of the Valley View Drive past Mallard Drive included in that lower speed section. Next slide. And lastly, we have Puntledge, which was, again, very engaged school community, a lot of great comments that we heard. A lot of folks really felt strongly that traffic calming in and near the front of the school would be very supported. So that could look at some of the interventions we're looking at there, raised pedestrian crossings or intersections, curb extensions, rapid flashing beacons, as Matt just showed in the previous slides, and speed tables, which are kind of vertical deflection on roadways to kind of help drivers slow down and recognize that they should be slowing down. The 4th Street and Woods Avenue intersection also was an important one that was flagged by a lot of folks. And again, we'd look at raised intersection or crossings and curb extensions to really narrow that field of vision and help drivers recognize that they should be slowing down at those sections. The Willamar Woods Alley was also one that we heard a lot about. And so we'd look at either a traffic calming measures there or a temporary closure during drop-off and pickup periods to non-emergency vehicles. And then a crossing guard program was also quite supported at specific locations such as Willamar and 4th Street. Next slide.
Just going to pause you for 1 second, Jamie. So
Sure.
one thing I wanted to touch on, we have a really strong relationship with the school district. So we're presenting today a lot of the interventions that are kind of the raw interventions we're hearing from the community. So these have to be vetted through the school district board as well. So I just want to acknowledge that. They were very fair in us letting us share this information, but we also gain their support before we kind of move forward on some of these pieces. I just want to touch on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. Jamie just went over all the engineering interventions, and I'm going to touch on education, encouragement, and enforcement. Just want to note that all of the education interventions were the same across the 3 schools. So we've consolidated to one slide showing the rate ranking for all 3 schools, but the report has all the details per school. And so the top 3 ranked education interventions. Number 1, survey participants were in favor of adding a getting to school page on each school's website, which would feature information for using modes of active transportation and just information like a map on how to get to school safely. And then secondly, it was working with teachers to add content into coursework and lectures and utilize active transportation actually in class as much as possible. And then thirdly, incorporate active travel messaging and encouragement into promotion for school-based events. And yeah, this may apply to on and off school property events. Next slide, please. On to the encouragement interventions. So top ranked across all 3 schools was make regular announcements and mount posters at the schools. Yeah, encouraging active transportation, also taking transit to school. Secondly, exploring a formal or informal walking school bus. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is where parents or community members kind of gather up students who are all walking or biking to school. And yeah, it's used across the country for getting students excited about using active transportation to get to school. And thirdly, just encouraging students to walk with family and friends, building confidence and independence getting to school. Next slide.
Again, some of these points here, we're going to be talking about our compliance with the RCMP or working with them. So again, we have a really strong relationship with them. Some of these points we're going to have to vet through them as well. So.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, this is just, again, highlighting like overall ranking from the participants of the survey, from all the engagement. And they'll be developed, obviously, like in collaboration with community partners. Okay, enforcement intervention. So these were the top 3, enforcement. First of all, identify locations with poor compliance or road safety challenges and identify measures to optimize available enforcement. Secondly, focus on enforcing vehicles blocking crosswalks, parking in proximity to hydrants, and narrowing emergency routes. So these are more like compliance issues within school zones. And then thirdly, conducting biannual safety reviews to enforce speeds and other road safety concerns at key locations. So those were the 3 like other categories apart from engineering. We can go to the next slide. I just want to touch on, so at the end of the second phase of engagement in the survey, participants were asked if all of these interventions listed above, so that includes engineering, education, enforcement, encouragement, if they were all enforced, what would your level of agreement be with the following statement? My neighborhood is safer for children to walk, bike, or roll to school. And so again, it's a bit small, but across Courtenay, Valley View, and Puntledge Park, we saw much higher numbers. So we saw like plus 42.9 from Courtenay Elementary, plus 50 from Valley View, and plus 37.2 for Puntledge Park. And so comparing those numbers to our initial survey when asking parents how they felt about letting the students use active modes of transportation to get to school, we're seeing much higher numbers. So just wanting to highlight the continued engagement and following up on those previous questions we'd asked back in October when we started the program. That's it.
So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Now we'll open up some questions and considerations to our next steps as developing our 5-year capital plan. Thank you.
Excellent. I think pretty much every light is on. So I will pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks very much. And thanks for the work. And I live about 50 meters from Puntledge Elementary. So I see all of those improvements and what they're doing on the ground there. And I had, I guess, one thought and one question. The thought was that, for example, on Puntledge, I love those big painted signs on the road that say school. There's no way you can miss it. But where it is between Woods and Willamar, you're almost at the school, and it's a very short block where you couldn't go fast. You can see the school right there. I'm wondering if there'd be thought given to perhaps putting those signs a little further away, like say on the hill going downwards towards 4th, where people pick up speed, and there was an injury recently. Whether that's being contemplated, just that the school markings, which are so visible, be a little further away. And it sounded like with Valley View, that was maybe the case. And the other question was about crossing guards. I think that's a great idea. And it was interesting to see it only came up once, and it came up at the 4th and Willamar, which is literally the front gate of the school. And they're a 4-way stop already. I was wondering why only that place, and whether crossing guards came up as a more frequent suggestion by respondents.
I can speak to that. For your first point, thank you for that. With the symbols, our team worked really hard on that. In terms of consideration for placement, we were trying to balance current versus future state too. So as we look at the 5-year capital plan, is that the best spot for those markings if we build out? So we considered that as part of it. Two, we're open to your feedback on that. If there's some ways we can improve it, that's great. On the second piece for the crossing guards, we heard that pretty consistently. It should come over the top 5 comments from that one school, but it was pretty consistent. We did hear about the crossing guards from across the schools.
Okay, thanks. I have a couple more, but I'll get back in line.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the work. I'm just wondering what we're doing in terms of collecting metrics to determine whether more young people are actually walking to school or not as we implement these changes.
I might lean to Jamie because he's does the but he has the bike walk roll.
He looked like he was ready to talk. So
Yeah, I was just waiting. Yeah, so we did a baseline, what's called a hands up survey back in November of 2025, using an application called bikewalkroll.org, and everybody can take a look at it. It's a web-based application that we created probably about 10 years ago when we started doing a lot of this work. And it's just as simple as it sounds. Is you ask students for a 5-day period how they got to school, and they put up their hand and indicate that. So that was sort of one method that we determined that. And that one can be an ongoing tool. And so what we envision as the SAS program rolls out in the years ahead is that we do that on sort of a biannual basis, typically in the fall and in the spring. And then you can kind of track sort of overall interventions. And also in terms of baseline data collection, the family survey also gave an opportunity for families to indicate their primary mode of transportation when their students were traveling to and from school. So we have a good sort of baseline understanding, and then we're going to be doing ongoing data collection as we move forward with the program.
excellent. Thanks very much for that. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And on to Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm generally really supportive of the work and supportive of the recommendation for the 5-year. I did just have one clarification question. I think it's only under École Pontledge, which I guess I could have Googled it, but drive to 5+ locations. What is that? It's the only school that was in the top 3 of their encouragement interventions.
I can, yeah, jump on. So when we looked at this, woods potentially could be a drop-off location as opposed to pulling into the school zone. So it's kind of a driving and dropping zone, not asking the kids to walk a 5-minute period to school. So that's kind of the idea is you drive still to the school because it's a French immersion school. So you from cross community coming to that location. So having them drive at a little bit further away and allowing the kids to walk safely to school. So that's the idea behind that.
Okay, and as a follow-up, Mayor, so theoretically, those locations would be assessed based on your shop's analysis of traffic flow
for sure.
in those areas that would limit potential impacts on vehicle and bike traffic, and parents can pull over safely. Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question. That's part of the recommendation for the 5-year review. So we have some ideas, but we want to get council support on moving forward those ideas and then coming back to council for support.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. As someone that travels through that area during school drop off, I think there are some formal places that's already going on, just based by my observations of parents that are dropping kids off at the top of the hill and letting them walk down with friends or whatever. My question was around the enforcement piece. There's highlighting an action of just, that back to school push, which I think has been fairly consistent use of our CMP resources over the years. And yeah, just thinking about schools like Valley View, I know Arden School isn't one of the schools that we're highlighting here because this program is taking the lead that they set for us, and enforcement of the school zone is a major challenge on that road just because there is a tendency for speed. I think Valley View would probably fit in a very similar category, or although maybe not quite as extreme because there is at least a curb sidewalk there. But just wondering around the engagement with the RCMP around continuous, or not continuous, but not just as a back to school thing, but also the random factor of, regular school zone enforcement, and especially in areas where, you know, but Punt Ledge is one thing. It's surrounded by four-way stops. I don't think that speed is the biggest factor there around safety. I think there's other, you know, it's like the crossings and other types of conflict there, parked cars on the side of the road. But in these areas where there is ongoing challenges with speed, what kind of support have we been able to obtain from the RCMP in advancing this program? Have we had that conversation? Is there a plan in place? I certainly do appreciate the back to school piece, but I think it could be maybe broader and possibly targeted to those bigger hazard areas.
First and foremost, they've been excellent to work with. Every time we brought up a concern of a service request for speed, they responded and supported us. So the intent behind this is I kind of agree with you. We could do better and be more organized on it. As part of our recommendations for the next 5-year plan is to look at that, how we can get that better with that strategy. So
Thanks. And I also have more comments, but
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. Again, really keen to see this work happen. Really excited about the improvements to kids, you know, physical and mental well-being using this, and you mentioned that. That's really great. Also the economic benefits of parents not having to spend 30 minutes of their day driving around town, and possibly not even using vehicles as much. The only thought I had, and maybe I brought it up and it was discounted as not that important, but the field between Lake Trail School and Punt Ledge School, it's walked a lot. And someone's done a great job of putting in a bridge over what's essentially a creek in the summertime or in the wintertime. And was there any comments on improving that so it's a little raised and kids can get by without, I mean, I love to see kids in rubber boots, but I don't think they ever want to wear them. So any thoughts on that spot? I am maybe Jamie, I'm not sure if you want to speak to any of the pieces of that. So
Sure. It's just, I think the only reason we didn't bring it up is was not raised as an issue in any of the engagements with either. And one thing that we neglected to mention earlier on is that we did engage with the students as well. We had the students at Punt Ledge, Valley View, and Courtenay Elementary. We took them sort of on a walkabout, which is what it's, you know, just as how it sounds, around the school to kind of identify any areas that they felt were kind of missing gaps in sidewalks or problematic areas. And that one, I think when we did the walkabout, most of them thought it was kind of a fun feature, to be honest. And so it wasn't raised as much as a concern, as much as an opportunity for play. But it's certainly something we can go and take an additional look at. But yeah, the only reason we didn't talk about it today is it just wasn't raised as a major concern by any of either the interest holders or the school community.
Well, it's good to hear that the kids are more robust than their parents, and I don't want to spend any money on it, so never mind.
An intentional play area. Very nice. Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for this. I love all the engagement we're doing, particularly with young people. And it makes me think that, you know, when we do these improvements, it doesn't just improve it for students going to school, it improves it for everybody. All the seniors, people with mobility issues, all kinds of folks who are trying to move around and making it safer for the young folks, makes it safer for everybody. But I did have a question around if there's been any integration with, I was sort of trying to take a look at some of the ICBC stats around incidents in these particular neighborhoods, and yeah, if there's been sort of integration of that information that's helped inform, aside from the feedback that you've received directly from parents and students.
yes, it's a great question. Thank you for that. So that was one of the initial pieces that we looked at when we're determining the schools. That was one of our key metrics for establishing the 3 schools. Also, we have some really good work going on with our strategic transportation plan. So we're able to overlay quite a few good projects and identify those areas and support it. So to answer your question, yes, we have. And it's kind of fortunate that we're doing a lot of really good initiatives right now to better understand that.
Right, so that'll be, yeah, those high incident locations will be addressed as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're trying to balance what the community wants to see and
Yeah.
some of the data around it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks, Councillor Moore and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. The report talks about, sort of contemplates that other schools may be involved at some point in the future. And I guess I was wondering if there's any thoughts on a timeline as to how soon that could happen. I guess at this point we'd have like what Lake Trail and Quinish and Arden as the remaining schools, and I certainly think that Quinish Mission Road is probably not dissimilar from Lake Trail. It's a long straight road that I bet I've seen people move pretty fast on. So anyway, I'd be curious to know if you have any thoughts on which schools you would go to next and how soon that might possibly happen.
A great question as well. And we actually are establishing the 26 and 27 program with those three schools. We're just a matter of going to the board. It's very busy at the end of the spring season, of course, for the school district. So we're working with them hand in hand, going to visit the board in the fall and September, and launching that program shortly thereafter. So we can look forward to an open house probably mid-November for that. So yeah.
Okay, I'll lobby board members then. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks again. My other question was around the education encouragement aspect. Both those pieces are really from the school culture point of view, and it sounds as though we've done some excellent engagement with the school group. I imagine that there's probably some staff members that are much more involved than others, but I'm wondering like how, if there's a role for the city to support that continuity in these schools where we've put in, you know, a very like thorough process in identifying these things, but a lot of the, you know, the lasting work is, you know, keeping that messaging alive and interested at the school, and whether or not, you know, like even something as simple as like identifying areas on a website, like, you know, that needs to be passed on to somebody. And yeah, whether you can comment on just if there's, if we have developed better integration between, you know, our services around supporting active transportation and what needs to happen on the school side of that process.
I can speak to, from the city side, what we can do. We're working very closely with the school district. As I forecast out this 5-year plan, very critical to me will be the engagement piece and measuring the impact on the infrastructure that we're doing. So there'll be a good component of that. There'll be recommendations for engagement and ongoing consultation with the school district and education piece of it. So that's what I can speak to from the city side.
That's good to hear.
Can I hop in as well, Matt?
Of course, yeah, go for it, James.
Sure. Just to follow up on that, that's kind of a subjective thing. We've worked previously, we did the youth travel strategy for Metro Vancouver, and part of that was looking at municipal capacity to sort of support these initiatives. So I think that kind of goes towards what you're asking about. And certainly we have seen local governments be more active in terms of promoting and supporting that. Matt also talked a little bit about the school district and the school board. They've been very supportive, but we also recognize limited capacity of the teachers. Sometimes, to your point, in terms of longevity and sustainability, rely on volunteers to lead, like a lot of walking school bus programs or even crossing guard programs. So one thing we'll be looking at in our recommendations is trying to find what interest and level of capacity that the school district and the schools have, and also kind of where the city is able and willing to kind of fill those gaps and support it going forward. So that's part of the conversations, I think, where we kind of meet in the middle to make sure that those programs are continued long-term. And we do get that encouragement and education components on an ongoing basis, but it's very, very important.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks for that additional comment. And it's something that occurred to me is that, you know, a lot of the time in schools, there is a teacher or two that is really interested in this. And, you know, we've done this engagement, and if we can establish something on the city side as an ongoing resource for teachers that perhaps come and go and are, you know, a teacher that has a grade 5 class is maybe more interested in kind of, you know, providing like the, you know, safe biking class than maybe if you're dealing with grade 1s, and, you know, teachers change roles over time. But if the city can provide some consistency as to where they can go to provide or to just have that ongoing engagement piece, I think there's some value to that. And the other comment I wanted to make about that is that if we are moving on to Lake Trail as a potential school, I know that there's an outdoor program there that they use active transportation, I think on a weekly basis, to go around the community as a school group. And so I also see that as a potential to engage with, you know, a middle school age group on what barriers they have beyond just that little zone around their middle school. Because of course, older kids do confidently and independently ride their bikes in wider areas than just, you know, maybe the couple blocks around their school. So hopefully we can use that as an opportunity for input from that group as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum, and on to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I just had a thought. Did I miss it? Have you guys done anything with the iRide program that seems to get into all our schools and teach kids how to ride their bikes safely and so on? Yeah, Jamie's nodding, so let Jamie take this one. He looks like he's comment.
Yeah, we definitely looking at working with the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition does deliver a lot of the cycling education programs to local schools. And so I think they're interested in continuing that, but you know, related to the previous conversation, the volunteer base sometimes is a bit of a challenge. So I think that'll be something that we'll look at, again, what their capacity is to undertake. The iRide program that I think that you're talking about is run through Hub Cycling. And so that in Metro Vancouver is actually funded partially through TransLink and partially through the school board. So that would be another conversation, I think, with the school district about what that might look like. But it's certainly something that's in the toolbox of possible interventions and programs that we're well aware of.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. I think my only comment, this is fantastic news. I know my kids loved walking to school, and they had a forest, and actually they liked riding their bikes, and it caused my son to actually have to get rid of his training wheels because of the stumps and stuff. So sometimes things that are a little more difficult do make good things. And wearing my other hat, I do have to say the markings in Courtenay, often I hear lots of complaints from people, but the school bus drivers, I would say, on the whole, are just totally excited about it, just because it does create that more extreme awareness and has actually caused, because that just came in just before the end of the school year, and the impact was palpable at the time. So again, big kudos for that. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Fantastic. Thanks again for that report. Next, we have 5.2.2, the Water Conservation Strategy, Stage 3 Water Restrictions. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Shaw, and the mic's already on.
Look at me go. Perfect. Well, I will offer that Director Grieve set a pretty high standards. I didn't prepare a jingle for you today, but
Next time.
maybe you can add that to the resolution and I can get one to you next time. I put myself on the spot there. You don't want to hear me sing. Anyways, so good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity today to discuss water conservation strategy, specifically around stage 3 restrictions. We haven't had a significant opportunity to have a robust discussion on this topic in quite some time. So this is kind of new for our community this time of year. So there's a fairly lengthy presentation here today, just really get into the details and the background and hopefully provide clarity, information, and a bit of background onto how we got here and what our plans are, current state, future state. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide council with an overview of the operational response to stage 3 restrictions, outline the measures staff have taken to cut potable water use while maintaining essential services, and to seek council's direction on implementing a firm and consistent enforcement approach supported by coordinated communications, education, and regional collaboration. So I've organized it a little bit here for us as we go through, and we'll take a step by step, but I'll start with why stage 3 restrictions are in effect and what they mean for residents. Then I'll outline the city's operational response, the changes that we've made to our irrigation systems, our maintenance practices, and our use of alternate water sources. Next, I'll talk about communications and education, which have been central in helping residents understand the restrictions and the reasons behind them. And then finally, I'll get into enforcement. This really is the decision point of the discussion tonight. The staff are recommending that the city move beyond education and voluntary compliance towards a model that is more visible, consistent, and aligned with the regional enforcement approach. So why are we in stage 3 restrictions? Stage 3 restrictions are in place because our regional supply is tied to the Comox Lake level and the Puntledge River conditions. Importantly, this is not a discretionary local response to dry weather or drought conditions that you might see across the province.
It's connected directly to the regional supply framework and the flow rate in the Puntledge River. The stage triggers are specific. When BC Hydro flow rates drop below 11.3 cubic meters per second, stage 3 is initiated. That threshold protects the environment, sensitive habitats, and domestic water supplies. Now, the timing here matters, as I alluded to earlier. Entering stage 3 this early signals increased vulnerability and raises the prospect of longer period of restrictions through the summer and potentially even moving to stage 4. The conditions driving this are significant. Flows into the Comox Reservoir are at their lowest they've been in 64 years. The cumulative inflow is about 21% of normal and a direct result of low snowpack and spring participation levels. So to conserve that storage, BC Hydro is reducing downstream flows from roughly 12 cubic meters a second to about 9 and may do further cuts to approximately 7.5 as early as mid-July. So key water restrictions for stage 3. So what do these restrictions actually mean for our residents? We know that the most important public message is lawn watering itself is not permitted at all. From the Water Smart Action Plan, we know that this reduction in lawn watering is the greatest opportunity for imminent and immediate outdoor reductions. There are, however, some limited allowances. Trees, shrubs, flowers, food gardens can all still be watered, but only by hand or watering cans or drip irrigation. These restrictions also cover other discretionary uses such as washing, filling pools or fountains, or pressure washing. So some of these restrictions apply to the city too. We can't ask residents to change their behavior without showing leadership in how we manage city parks, boulevards, and our other maintenance programs. We want to be transparent because there are exemptions. They're built right into the stage 3 because fairness depends on people understanding them and us being clear about what exemptions exist at a municipal level. So some exemptions are by necessity. Nurseries, farms, turf farms, tree farms, where water is tied to livelihood. With local governments, this focuses on parks and pools, which can serve public health benefits. There are also tightly bound allowances for municipal watering, limited overnight sprinkling for parks and boulevards on alternating days between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., provisions for golf courses, fairways, greens, and tee boxes, small wading pools, and commercial and dealership vehicle washes that use recirculating water. The point is, these exemptions are narrow and very rule-based. They're not considered loopholes. They should be recognized as essential uses while keeping the conservation intent intact. The city's response is an integrated strategy representing a range of conservation tools and actions across the Operational Services Department. First, the operational response. Staff have reviewed municipal water use and reduced or modified activities wherever possible while still protecting public health, public safety, critical assets, and essential services. Second, is focuses around communication and education. Residents need clear information on what is restricted, why it matters, and what they can still do to conserve water. And third is enforcement. Given the early timing of stage 3 and the potential for prolonged conditions, voluntary compliance alone is likely not to be enough. So let me share what the city is doing, because leadership begins with our own operations. Operational Services has moved proactively to cut water use. Irrigation systems has been suspended across many areas, including neighborhood parks, ornamental turf, as non-essential landscapes, and decorative boulevards where feasible, with limited irrigation being maintained only where there is a clear operational public safety or public asset or community service rationale. For perspective, under stage 2, parks irrigation across the city uses roughly 9,000 cubic meters per week. And under stage 3, that consumption has been reduced by over 60%. Staff have also reviewed routine maintenance activities and adjusted work where possible to avoid unnecessary potable water use, deferring or modifying or supplementing activities with alternate water sources. And this work is ongoing as staff continue to look for more opportunities to reduce water. For the city's operation, it's about balancing water conservation efforts against the potential for losing public assets that residents have already paid for. We've reduced irrigation significantly, but some remain necessary. Newly planted trees, high-value landscape, sand-based sports fields, a select program parks, and our own capital investments that could be damaged or even lost if watering is stopped altogether. Tree prevention or tree protection or preservation is particularly a priority. Our parks team continues to manually water trees or use watering bags, delivering water directly to the root zone for minimal waste. Now the splash park, the public pool, and our cooling amenities continue to operate. Unlike lawn watering, these aren't necessarily discretionary. During heat events, they provide accessible cooling for residents, including our vulnerable populations. A practical step worth highlighting is our expanded use of alternate water sources. The former Sandwick Aquifer well is used where appropriate to reduce reliance on treated potable water. Examples being sanitary sewer flushing, storm system flushing, street sweeping, and limited irrigation opportunities where feasible. The principle we have here is simple: match the source with the need. Not every activity requires treated potable water, and where it's safe and suitable to do so, staff are using alternate resources. This eases pressure on the regional system while still allowing necessary maintenance programs to continue. Communication has been a major part of the stage 3 response thus far, and I'd argue that it's the foundation everything else rests on. Residents need to understand both what restrictions are and why. We focused on the single most important behavioral change, and that is no lawn watering. Digital message boards keep that front and center for residents during their daily travels, and the door hangers that we provided at a household level provide that information as well as practical conservation tips. Importantly, this messaging deliberately precedes enforcement. The city is moving from an awareness to an accountability point, and residents need to know that the restrictions are mandatory, that compliance will be monitored, and that enforcement may follow if violations continue. Which brings me to enforcement and why it may be necessary. Education remains important, but the current conditions call for more than just voluntary compliance. The city has already completed a substantial awareness period, public messaging, digital signboards, the door hangers that were finished deploying today, and direct communications. Arguably, residents have had clear notice. If restrictions are not monitored and applied consistently, non-compliance undermines the program as a whole. And it could also create a fairness problem. Residents who comply shouldn't have to watch while others keep watering their lawns without consequence. A visible enforcement presence sustains demand reduction, reduces rebound use, and reinforces the restrictions that they need to be taken seriously. Staff recommend an enforcement approach that is visible, consistent, and fair. The focus should be on high impact outdoor use, particularly lawn watering, where enforcement has the greatest impact on peak demand. I want to be clear about the intent here. This is not a move away from our education first model. The goal, however, is to gain rapid and sustained compliance. In many cases, this still means explanation and direction and communication. But where violations are clear and ongoing, the city should be prepared to use the compliance tools that are at its disposal. So staff are recommending treating this past 3-week period as our communication and awareness period as sufficient public notice. And that makes immediate enforcement following council direction reasonable and consistent with the broader bylaw compliance approach across our community. So let's look at some consumption trends. For context, I think council have seen this one before, but here's the 2020 to 2025 monthly consumption trends, with July of 2025 being one of our highest in recent years, almost reaching 1 million cubic meters in that month alone. On average, during non-watering months, the city uses between 17 and 20 megaliters a day. In the summer, that number can hit between 48 and 55 megaliters per day. That is a 2.5 times average. Jumping ahead, looking at where we are in terms of 2026, at this point in the summer, demand would normally be tracking near seasonal peak, with May this year being slightly higher than last, which would align with our current conditions. The chart then shifts from actuals, so you'll see the color change from a dark orange to a gray, where we forecasted out consumption predictions for the remainder of the year. Going forward, we should expect that consumption will remain fairly in line with May and June, and even drop in July as compliance increases. Staff also anticipate a slight rebound in August as conditions linger over the summer period. These are just observations. Hopefully we can change some of those. Here's two snapshots of a 2-week period of consumption. West Courtenay being the 87 on your left, and the Crown Isle area, the 138 zone on your right. And we can clearly see the reduction in total consumption post-implementation of stage 3. This is extremely encouraging. You can clearly see on the blue, we're in stage 2 and 3, and stage 3 starts in the kind of orange color there, and consumption has clearly dropped off. Not so much in the 87 zone, which is West Courtenay, but you can clearly see it in the 138. Those large bumps in the blue area are watering days, and then the non-watering after stage 3, it's clearly dropped off. Staff will continue to monitor consumption and flow data and confirm whether the reductions are holding through the summer. And if demand rebounds or conditions worsen, then we'll strengthen our communication and our proactive compliance approach. This data gives us early evidence that looks to compliance levels being well in play, and enforcement is very encouraging, or the data is very encouraging right now for staff. And one more. This is a data set that I think we've seen as well before, which is the Beechwood Booster Station, which feeds into the Ridge development. And again, after stage 3 restrictions, you can see a significant drop in consumption, which would otherwise been on watering days. So again, super positive. You see those large bumps, which are watering days, and 2 to 2.5 times our peak day flow, which dropped off quite rapidly. So compliance early has been very good. We've had some lighter temperatures, we've had some rain, so those are all encouraging things. Still work to do. So again, regional collaboration is very important at this time, as this is not simply a Courtenay issue or a city issue. The city operates within the Comox Valley Regional Water Conservation Framework, so consistent messaging and coordination enforcement across all jurisdictions matters for both effectiveness and fairness. The city's bylaw compliance approach emphasizes an education first model, and staff suggest that that expectation has been substantially met through the messaging and door hangers and signage. And moving now to a more proactive enforcement approach simply recognizes that a reasonable notice period has passed. Taken together, this approach protects the regional supply system, our environment, public health, and reinforces fairness for residents who comply, and reduces the city's operational and reputational risks. On the budget side, staff anticipate that these measures can be managed within existing budgets. The city's water conservation funding framework supports initiatives that reduce demand, improve system efficiency, and respond to changing environmental conditions. And administratively, this work involves operational services, communications, bylaw, and of course, coordination with the CBRD. So the decision point. Staff are recommending the council direct staff to implement and enforce the stage 3 water restrictions and to carry out the operational communication, education, and inspections and compliance activities to support the conservation objectives. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Really glad to see our previous reports on water conservation, and the second, and that looks to coordinate more closely with Comox Valley Regional District bylaw as well, to make sure there's that aligned messaging, but also enforcement. So really appreciate that. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was just looking at slide 15. It was the water demand management consumption trends. And you had two zones, 87M and 138M. And I just didn't quite understand what those two zones were. I mean, significantly different amounts of water being used. So could you describe to me again which zones those are and why one hasn't really perhaps decreased as much as the other?
Yeah,
And maybe why it's using more water to begin with.
That's great. It's a great question. So the 87-meter zone is by far the city's largest zone. It's primarily the majority of West Courtenay and portions of East Courtenay. So it's a fairly large zone. The seasonal use in that zone is much less than some of the others, where the Beechwood Booster Station and the 138 are much more grass-oriented, new greenfield development areas. And so the consumption is less, but also the zone is less. And so you see the total consumption being less, and therefore the differential between the two varies quite dramatically.
Thanks, that's clear. Appreciate it.
And if there was that 12-month trend, so you could see how they go up and down or not, that might, because my expectation is the one on the right goes up a lot more in the summertime and a lot further down in the winter. Does that?
It's a very good observation.
Yeah, even though we can only see this little bit. All right, thanks for that. Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I have a couple questions, but I'll probably just get back in line. So yeah, happy to get some details on what the city's doing. You know, I've brought this up before. We know what's permitted, but some people actually do less than what's permitted, and it looks like the city is doing that in some areas. I know you didn't mention the water park specifically, but I had heard that we've reduced the flow in the water park, or the pressure or something, so that we are using less water. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Carmichael, the
Okay.
manager of Park Services, to speak directly to that asset assumption.
Great question. We have not yet reduced the flow at the water park.
Right,
yet.
right into the mic.
Oh, sorry. We have not yet reduced the flow at the water park
Okay.
as yet. But if we do sustain this, and we have opportunity to turn off individual features at the water park,
Right.
and then not reducing the flow.
So there-
that's
yeah.
still in our back pocket. It just hasn't happened yet.
There are, yeah, so there are other things that we can do to do our part, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to acknowledge that many low-income families, you know, don't have heat pumps, don't have air conditioners, live in very hot places, apartments and things like that. So yeah, water parks can be important, and even though we are obviously wasting some water there. And we do have the new misting stations as well coming on. We have one downtown, but we also have another one coming at the park, at Woodcote Park, I believe. And do we have another one?
Ms. Saunders.
Through the mayor to Councillor Morin, we do have another misting station coming to Woodcote Park, I believe by the end of July, but we don't have a third location identified for another misting station.
So
at this
maybe
time.
by the time there's another big heat wave, we'll have more of those. And of course, they use much less water. So I think those are some good measures that we're doing. I don't know if I only have one question. My question was around enforcement during those times when our bylaw folks are not working. I know some people have said, oh, my neighbor waters their lawn in the middle of the night and there's nobody to enforce that. So how might we deal with that kind of issue?
It's a great question. Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Warren. And that's part of the reason through the resolution here to seek support from the regional district bylaw officers. They have a much more robust amount of time that they can be available. And so their schedule is a little bit more versatile than our own officers. Not to say that our officers are not out there almost every day of the week doing the hard work for our community. But they have a dedicated group at the regional district focused on water conservation and water conservation initiatives, specifically non-compliance issues with bylaw, and can be there for those off hours. So really it's about that joint process, working together collaboratively, understanding where some of those issues may be. And as people recognize, we obviously send our staff out to go and have conversations, but it's about, as anyone knows, sometimes you have to catch in the act. And so we have to be out there at 2 or 3 in the morning
Right.
potentially to.
Right. Yeah, and I know there's a question waiting. I just wanted to make a comment that the heat domes, we've been lucky we haven't gotten into those high 20s, 30 degrees, but it is a big issue. We had 600 people die in the province during the last heat dome. I know there's been other, in other parts of North America, there's been really high deaths. So I think we do need to balance out people's ability to stay cool as well if we do get to those high temperatures. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moran, and back to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks so much for this call. It's been really useful information. I'm supportive of the planned actions. I had one question though. It's on slide 5. It talks about the exceptions to, and one of them, and I think you said later that we were dialing back on it, includes ornamental lawns and grass boulevards that belong to the city as an exception. I'd be interested in getting the greater sense of what that means and if we actually are doing that, because I can understand people saying ornamental lawns and boulevards are not permitted for individuals, but are for the city, and what the reasoning for that would be.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for the question through the Mayor to Councillor Cole Hamilton. I'll start and I'll pass it over to Mr. Carmichael to answer specifics. While they are exemptions, and I wanted to be transparent about those exemptions, the city is not necessarily utilizing those exemptions to their full extent. So watering every other day for every park or every boulevard or ornamental is an opportunity within the constraints of the bylaw through an exemption, but it's not necessarily what we are doing as a city. And so
Can I clarify what ornamental means then? I thought parks were a separate thing. I was thinking ornamental would be like the front lawn of City Hall or something like that.
Very good. Yeah.
I'll jump back in. Thanks, Councillor. Exactly that. So I'll talk a bit about specifics, or I can even take more questions about it. But for example, ornamental grass is all turned off in the city. So we are only watering sports fields and some community parks that user groups rely on, Sims Park being a good example, as well as having a bit of a capital project there. And we have some new sod there, which we luckily got down before stage 3 came in. And so it's actually getting water just every second night there. So 2 community parks would be considered ornamental turf that's still being watered. And then all other neighborhood parks and boulevards are turned off at this time.
Okay, thank you. Just a thought for messaging, maybe it might be helpful. I know it's not on the door hanger or anything, but to talk about parks rather than ornamental lawns, because I think that could cause confusion. But
yes.
I appreciate you clarifying that well, despite the existence of the exemption, we're just not doing that.
That's right. Our biggest one is through neighborhood parks. So all of our neighborhood parks are turned off, and that's where we usually get our fingers getting pointed at us saying, hey, why is the park still running and I can't water my own grass? So all neighborhood parks right now are off.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering if it's safe to say that the vast majority of our residents are conscientious and do voluntarily follow these restrictions.
That's a great point. Thank you through the Mayor to Councillor Hillian. As we recognize through our work through the solid waste program and now with water conservation, most people want to follow the rules. We recognize that. We've seen that. The data shows that the vast majority of the community are following the restriction rules. There are outliers, and there are outliers no matter what work that we do. So we continue with that education. We continue with that notification period. And we continue to communicate with our residents about the importance of conservation. And unfortunately, sometimes enforcement is an outcome of that.
Yes, and as you pointed out, those who don't obey the rules are creating an unfair situation for those of us who do. But of course, we wouldn't expect that increased enforcement would necessarily bring in reams of fines. We would expect that just the knowledge of that increased enforcement would dissuade some more people from breaking the restrictions.
Yeah, thank you for that. Agreed. It's not necessarily about revenue generation, right? It's about environmental sustainability and protection. The fines are there to,
hopefully deter individuals, and enforcing those will again provide that additional oomph to push people over the line to maybe not choose that 3 a.m. Cycle on their sprinkler systems. But again, yeah, it's not necessarily about the funding. It's more so about the conservation efforts, the sustainability, and the protection of the watershed and the environment.
Right, and just finally from me, I did have an inquiry from an elderly resident with physical disabilities who was under the impression that because she had a very hard time with hand watering all her plants and shrubs, that she could gain some sort of an exemption. Now, I know that we've got that process underway where people can get help with their solid waste. But I don't believe we do have anything like that in this area, do we?
No, and again, it's another great point just to speak to the age of the existing bylaw and the restrictions that are there. It's not fully it developed to understand that those restrictions or those needs may exist within our community. And so it's a great point. And I'd hope to look to our regional partners as we go through the process of redeveloping that bylaw to consider appropriate exemptions for those such things as individual needs through accessibility. And that could include types and uses of water under stricter or exempt conditions, as well as continuing to allow for watering in, other conditions as we go further within the restrictions to support food and sustainable growth in our community that way.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Helene and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I just have a couple pieces of information as water chair with the regional district. Our upcoming water committee next week, we do have on the agenda the water master plan, which should be, we've been waiting on that for a while, and that should have a lot of really useful big picture information. I know our staff has worked really well with the regional district in terms of helping to develop that plan. So that's coming. And then there also will be a report on water restrictions and some proposed changes to the restrictions. And the report, the agenda is not out yet, but it does take a look at some of these considerations. We're in stage 3 now. If things don't improve, we would go to stage 4, which is extremely restrictive. And so there will be something in the report that gives us another option in between those. So stay tuned on that, and the water committee folks will see that next week. And then I just also wanted to mention that we actually have not been heavy enforcers. We've been very education driven, and this actually puts us more in line with the rest of the valley. So we're actually we haven't been very heavy handed with our enforcement, and the other municipalities and the regional district have maybe stepped it up a little bit more than us. So I just want to make that point that we're actually not becoming more militant than anyone else in the valley, and in fact are just trying to align with those practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. We still got a few more mics on. Yeah, we've got just at least 2 on that I can see right now, but Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks for the presentation and really highlighting again the actions that operationally we're taking to also meet the stage 3. My question is actually related to enforcement, and it's not articulated in the staff report. And so I'm going to ask, but the recommendation that staff have put forward for our consideration is around implementing a shared or supplemental bylaw enforcement approach, including the use of regional bylaw officers. So there isn't any analysis in the staff report around what that actually means. You kind of just spoke about it briefly in terms of the hours that the CVRD bylaw officers work. But of course, we have a very well thought out bylaw compliance framework and bylaw compliance policy. And your staff report does articulate, and this is one thing that the first paragraph of the resolution, I'm not sure. For me, I didn't feel like you needed to come to us for permission for that. It feels like we're actually following the policy that we've laid out for bylaw, which is educate. And if you don't follow it, then we go to enforcement. So that first paragraph for me just actually feels like we are reinforcing the direction we gave through the policy a few years ago, and that is in place now at the city. But I'm wondering, I don't know if it's for Mr. Shaw or for our city manager, Yeah, trying to understand what the implications are of having a shared or supplemental bylaw enforcement approach. What does that mean in practice? And specifically, I don't think we've contemplated having regional bylaw officers enforcing city or bylaws within the city. Maybe we have, and I just haven't been made aware. But if we can speak to what the implications of that is, because it's not articulated in the staff report. Any risks, anything we need to be worried about? Beyond, I guess the big piece I'm worried about is our bylaw officers are trained in our approach that we spend a lot of time developing. So my worry is that we have folks who will be representing the city potentially that might not be trained in the same way. That's the big flag for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. So a couple things along that line. I think Councillor Warren touched on them as well. Really, one of the kind of restrictive pieces that we have within our enforcement model is the time in which our staff can be in the field to witness events. And really, it's about witnessing the event firsthand from an officer's perspective. It's one thing to have reports from neighbors or from other staff. They have to be there to witness the event to ensure that it can be adjudicated appropriately through the processes and enforced that way. And oftentimes we know that enforcement isn't necessary. It's the officer literally showing up at your door and saying, "Hey, you've been non-compliant," often is enough, and that's really what we hope to get into. But we do know, and as we heard from Mr. Curvers not too long ago when he presented, is a multitude of things that he's dealing with on a daily basis. Whereas the CBRD have officers that are specific to conservation, to water, that can dedicate time and resources in parallel to our own teams. And so from this resolution, and you're correct, it is a bit of an affirmation. The first paragraph is just to ensure that we all understand exactly what we are doing and what we've committed to. So there is that affirmation perspective, but really in the second piece, it's about the collaboration and the working together. Specifically through the resolution, staff are seeking support from council to build that process and build that alliance and work hand in hand with those groups and put the teams together to have that discussion as to how we're going to manage it and whether there's going to be just witnessed events from bylaw officers at the CBRD and then follow up from the city. But then that passing of information is cohesive and meets the adjudication process that they may need down the road to enforce the ticket or the violation.
So just as a follow-up, thanks, Mr. Shaw. For example, our bylaw compliance framework has an established complaint process for businesses and residents to bring forward complaints around our staff and our process. So if there was a complaint from a City of Courtenay resident, for example, or a business about a regional bylaw officer, how would we manage that? I'm questioning because it's a highly contentious issue. I'm in favor of the recommendation, but we don't actually articulate in practice how this is going to roll out. And I just would like to know a little bit more information.
He does, and if I may, just one thing before I let him get into the deeps of that. I just wanted to highlight as well, the bylaw that we're seeking to enforce is a CBRD bylaw. They have always had the jurisdiction inside the city to enforce that bylaw. We have taken a communicative approach to asking them to stand down to allow us to use our process, where that is education, outreach first and foremost, rather than compliance. So this is just stripping down those boundaries a little bit, but they have always had that opportunity to do so.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. From a service perspective, actually, the town of Comox utilizes CVRD bylaw enforcement officers. So we have a model, but they have to deal with it. We have the staff groups that work together and share information already at the bylaw enforcement stage. I would say one of the reasons why we are bringing this here is it is a slight adjustment because based on the level of concern that's been expressed around this table from council, and there are some very vocal members of our community who are expecting and demanding in writing that the city take action. And so our regular approach is to take significant steps to seek compliance before fines, et cetera. And that will likely be part of it. So that, just to be clarified, that's why we are talking in front of council, because I think there's been a question raised, shouldn't staff just do this? Well, actually, council gave significant direction to which we established how we enforce bylaws. And because of the severity of the situation, this is why we do have to change and adjust, because there are significant issues related to this. But in terms of if someone complained about the actions of a I guess we just use the word contracted bylaw service, we would deal with it the same way that we would deal with any complaint. As an example, the CVRD deals with a contracted transit service. If there are complaints about that, I know that the CVRD walks through that internally. So we would use existing methods. Again, this issue, I would caution, there are going to be lots of people pointing fingers, and we'll try and be as easy and even-handed as we can, but there will potentially be ticketing. There's ticketing now in some areas, and some people will be unhappy about that, and we will unfold our bylaw adjudication process, which is a provincially recognized method to fairly adjudicate these issues. So it shouldn't be a political issue, but it will become in the social media. I'm assuming that it's rife with it right now. And our staff are already receiving bylaw enforcement complaints that we're acting on. The overnight work is a challenge. We've invested resources to have 7-day-a-week bylaw enforcement. We may, as the world evolves, have to contemplate evening, overnight, all sorts of items going forward. That at this point we're not there, and that's why using a shared model, I think, is a good way to work on resources.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Hilling.
Thanks, Mayor. Ironically, just as we're speaking, in beeps a message from somebody concerned about stage 4 water restrictions potentially coming down. So I'm glad to hear from Councillor Moran that we are going to be getting recommendations of the Water Committee to clarify those. And I believe they may address ability for watering food production, which we've had some concerns expressed about. But on that subject, I think that the main thing that we're trying to do here is expand the compliance and thereby prevent the necessity of moving to stage 4 restrictions, which will be a benefit to everyone. And with that, I'll move the recommendation.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. We are at 6 o'clock and dinner is ready, so we'll take our break now. It's currently 6:02. We'll come back at 6:25 and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program at that point. 2 minutes ago, so. All right, everybody, we're back. We're on to item 5.3.1, the Courtenay District Memorial Outdoor Pool Regional Funding Options. And I'll pass it over to Ms. Saunders.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, the report before you presents council with regional funding, governance, and project delivery options for the replacement of the Courtenay and District Memorial Outdoor Pool, and seeks direction on a preferred model to advance with the Comox Valley Recreation Commission and the Comox Valley Regional District. Council previously confirmed replacement of the outdoor pool as the preferred project direction. And the question before council this evening is how the city should seek regional participation in the funding, ownership, delivery, and long-term operation of the replacement facility. The pool has served the Comox Valley since 1949. While owned and operated by the city, it has long functioned as a regional recreation asset supported by regional users and long-standing regional funding arrangements, both operating and capital. The facility has also reached the end of its useful life with significant infrastructure, accessibility, regulatory, and operational concerns. This report builds on several years of planning, technical review, and public engagement. The Comox Valley Aquatic Needs Strategy confirmed that aquatic facilities are well used and valued across the region. The outdoor pool, what we heard report, received over 1,800 survey responses and confirmed strong support for retaining outdoor aquatic service, including a majority preference for keeping the pool at its current location in Lewis Park. And the 2025 options analysis reviewed options for repair, renovation, and replacement, with council confirming replacement as the preferred path forward last fall. The options in the report are organized around three key questions for council to consider: who borrows, who builds, and who operates the replacement outdoor pool. Those choices affect ownership, accountability, financial risk, operating responsibility, and importantly, project delivery certainty. Option 1 presented considers the city as borrowing, building, and operating the pool with approaching the CVRD for debt servicing support. This provides the clearest and most direct delivery path because the city would retain ownership, project control, and operational responsibility, and could continue building on the planning, site review, design, and technical work already completed. The trade-off is that the city would carry the borrowing obligation, significantly affecting the city's debt capacity and our future borrowing flexibility. Option 2 considers the regional district borrowing, building, and operating the pool. This option most fully establishes the pool as a regional recreation asset with ownership, financing, construction, and operations all to be transferred to the Comox Valley Regional District. However, it does create uncertainty from a project delivery perspective. A CVRD-led project would require likely further regional review, governance transition, approvals, and application of regional policy standards and processes, which could affect timelines at a point when the existing pool is nearing the end of its service life. Option 3 considers the CVRD borrowing and building the pool with the city operating it under a service agreement. This maintains city operating knowledge, but still transfers project delivery to the regional district and carries similar timing and regional review considerations as option 2. It also creates split accountability between the owner and funder and the operator. Option 4, which is the option recommended by staff, is to consider asking the regional district to borrow the funds to replace the pool while the city maintains responsibility for building and operating the facility. This provides the strongest balance by placing capital financing at the regional level while preserving city-led project delivery. In practical terms, it allows the city to maintain project momentum, continue using the planning and technical work already completed, and keep the project integrated with Lewis Park and the city's broader recreation service delivery. Staff are recommending that council approve option 4 and request the CVRD to consider this option because it provides the most practical balance of regional financial participation with project delivery certainty, operating continuity, and governance simplicity. It eliminates the borrowing impact on the city while avoiding much of the timing uncertainty associated with transferring project delivery to the regional district under options 2 and 3. A key consideration is that the Comox Valley Recreation Commission has already completed strategic and capital planning for regional recreation infrastructure. That planning identifies priorities such as field amenity upgrades, a new artificial turf field, expansion of ice facilities, and future indoor aquatics expansion. While the Comox Valley Aquatic Strategy included recommendations regarding the importance of retaining the outdoor pool, It isn't currently contemplated within the regional capital planning framework. For that reason, council's request to the Recreation Commission should be clear that the replacement of the Courtenay and District Memorial Outdoor Pool be formally added to the Regional Recreation Strategic and Capital Planning Framework and identified as an urgent priority. Without that direction, there is a risk that the project could be delayed while regional priorities are reviewed or reordered, despite the condition of the existing facility and the risk of service disruption and permanent closure. The recommendation is that council receive the report for information, endorse option 4 as the preferred model for further discussion with the regional district, request that the outdoor pool be incorporated into the Recreation Commission's Regional Recreation Strategic Planning and Capital Development Framework as an urgent priority, and direct staff to report back with any financial, legal, governance, and implementation considerations following consideration by the Recreation Commission and discussion with regional district staff. I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much for all the work done on that. And I will pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I wonder if you can refresh my memory. The pool's been free all season this year, right?
Correct. It's been free. I should know it's off the top of my head. It was free last summer and it was free, I believe, the entirety of the summer before, at least half of the summer, and it's free all this summer. Yes.
Yeah, there was a month or something that was free the first time around, but in any case, how is it going? The numbers as high as usual? Or?
Yes, we're still, I guess we're getting into the peak season. June is always a little bit slower for us, although we see quite a substantial uptake from schools. But when we looked at our numbers from 2025 compared to previous numbers, we were at 18,000 visits in 2025, which was up from, I think, about 14,000 in the prior year. So every year since post-COVID and since we reopened, we've been increasing our numbers. I think we're somewhere in the 40% increase of numbers since we reopened after COVID.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report. Yeah, I think what's laid out here is, you know, a fairly rational approach. I think it's really tricky what we're trying to accommodate, and that this facility just really doesn't match the systems that we have in place for regional assets, and it has a different history. And yeah, trying to fit that into a process that makes sense with the city and the regional district and funding and decision making, and also seeking public support is complicated. Even just determining, yeah, how wide, you know, if we're bringing this in as a regional initiative, then, you know, we're also seeking that support from one end of the Comox Valley to the other. Yeah, so that's just kind of my overall, I guess, thought on where we're at with this. And I mean, this is, in terms of the facility condition, it's a really high priority because the condition is such a challenge. But on the flip side of that, we haven't had any discussion at the regional table on prioritization and where this fits in terms of what the priorities are for, you know, our finite resources as a region for what can be funded. And we've had a ton of, well, we've just heard a lot from the ice user community on the limited access and space. And so, I mean, when we start getting into what goes first and what we can afford, I think the conversation could get complicated. And I think the suggestion that next step sit at a strategic planning process at the beginning of next term makes a lot of sense to me. One question I did have about this, because we're talking about kind of project implementation and where borrowing sits, but we're also looking at bringing on a facility then that's in a way starting anew, because it'll be a new contract. And I imagine when we go through this process, that model will look different than what we're currently doing with the outdoor pool. This facility is also going to be more costly to run. It's a bigger surface. And so I guess my question is just around the risk of, yeah, changing priorities as a region, what assurance we would have. I mean, obviously, if we go the suggested route of option 4, the borrowing sits at the regional district, so that actually does limit the risk in some way that it wouldn't, revert to Courtenay. But operationally, we're receiving quite a bit of support for running the facility as it is now, and that's basically done on a year-to-year basis. So I'm certain we would be looking for a different system of doing that, but like, how open would that be to future decision makers coming in and saying like, this isn't working as a regional model anymore? And yeah, and how we address that at this point in time, or is that a conversation for further down the line?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. You're correct. As it currently stands, the city receives both capital and operating funding for the outdoor pool on an annual basis through an application to the Recreation Grant Service as a part of the Recreation Commission. So it is it's subject to annual approval. We provide a 5-year financial plan, but they only provide approval on an annual basis. There is a resolution from the commission directing regional district staff to work with city staff to enter into and explore a funding arrangement that is long-term for the outdoor pool. That discussion has sort of been on pause while we figured out what the future of the pool is. It didn't make a lot of sense to put a lot of staff time into figuring out an operating agreement for a facility that we didn't have direction yet from council on its future. So if it was going to close imminently, it wouldn't make sense to enter into some long-term operating agreements. But that direction remains from the commission to regional district staff to, I think, take the pool out of an annual grant structure into a different operating model, but still funded, I believe, through the grant function. A consideration for council, I think when this request goes through to the commission, I don't think we have to accept the assumption that the pool continues to be funded on an annual basis through the Recreation Grant Service. I think, one, in order for the commission to take on borrowing and to own the asset, it's likely it has to move into the Recreation Complexes Service where it's allowed to own and borrow. And then that might be the cause for conversation to bring the service also into a different recreation function within the regional district. Which could open that conversation up to more stability around and certainty around operational funding. The board or the commission, I'm sorry, could consider establishing an entirely new service specifically for the outdoor pool that would allow that service to both borrow for the pool, provide operating and capital, and then the board would be basically entering into a service agreement with the city to provide that service, and that service agreement would provide that certainty. If the commission at some point decided they didn't want the city to deliver that service, then that would be a conversation at that time. I think the recreation complexes function at the regional district, it would still have to be amended because it doesn't currently contemplate the outdoor pool as an asset that it owns. But there's also an opportunity to amend that function to bring the outdoor pool into it. So I think there's a couple other avenues that the commission could consider that would allow for more certainty around future and long-term funding through a service arrangement and removing it from that annual grant program.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful to understand. And so I guess like in terms of a long-term certainty approach from the city's perspective, that perhaps having a service or bringing it into a formal service, whether it be like changing the terms of the rec complexes or a separate service would, that's the detail for later, but that would likely be the most enduring way to address it. And that would also likely trigger some type of electoral approval process. I mean, maybe this is a question for the CVRD table and not for here, but I know when we had to change a bylaw around a borrowing maximum for the field service, we weren't able to proceed with the artificial turf project. So it makes me wonder what other steps would be involved in initiating it if we we go that route. But again, I think maybe that's a question for a future meeting if you don't have an easy answer for it.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCullum, I can give you a high level answer. Generally, with any borrowing questions, there's generally, not always, but requires electoral assent. But if the Recreation Commission wanted to create a new service or a new function, it wouldn't require electoral approval. That could be done through each of the participants or an amendment to the bylaws of that function. But when it comes to borrowing, that's typically where that electoral involvement comes in.
So thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Moore.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I know some of these conversations happened quite a while ago, so I'm just trying to refresh my memory. When we looked at the different options, I know there were some questions around extending the use season of the outdoor pool, and I think it wasn't really feasible, obviously, because of you know, the temperatures cool down, etc. I would think even from those conversations 3 or 4 years ago when we started, you know, it's sadly we seem to be having warmer weather, you know, before the pool starts and after it closes. And I guess I was curious about whether there would be any feasibility in extending that season. And then someone also asked me about any outdoor pools that have longer seasonal use, like with retractable roofs or anything like that. So that was a question that came up.
Through the mayor to Councillor Moran. Absolutely, the season can be extended, kind of shoulder season. What we typically see in outdoor aquatic operations is May long weekend to really about the most is mid-September. Sometimes you can squeeze out end of September. Weather is a primary factor in that. So if it's just not warm enough, if there's cool wind, folks aren't choosing to swim outside. But also just and having experience with extending outdoor pool seasons, any later into September, we really start to families, participants, residents have really started to shift into their fall schedules.
Yeah.
And so if we're not able to provide, for instance, 8 weeks of swimming lessons starting in September, folks, of course, are going to be looking at the indoor pools to be able to set their schedules for the year, that type of thing. So in my past experience of extending schedules, the longest has kind of been mid-May to mid-September. Now with climate change, maybe you can get beginning of May to end of September, but that would be about the maximum at this time. In terms of, you know, retractable or roofs or that type of thing, it's not currently considered within the design. It'd have to be something added to the scope. And I think the other consideration is that if it's not protecting folks from the weather, it's not going to have kind of the value for money that we might want to have from that. So adding the roof, maybe it potentially gets you a couple of weeks, but I don't know that that's necessarily value for money.
Yeah, the benefits don't outweigh.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I'll just add, I believe when the consultants were here presenting on the conceptual designs, there was a question asked about kind of covering it or making it an indoor pool. And I believe they shared that the cost, for instance, if it was to be made indoor year round, is you're looking at a minimum of a doubling of cost. And so I think they shared it's not an insignificant change to go from an outdoor facility to an indoor facility.
Right. And I have another quick one if there's no other lights on. And have we thought about doing any type of tracking of people using, like what regions people are from using the pool? I heard that you can't really ask kids where they live. I don't know why, but do we have a way to have a better understanding of who in the region is using the outdoor pool?
Through the mayor to Councillor Moran, not currently and not really historically either, because we can from a lesson registration. So absolutely, we can look at our lesson registrations to get an understanding of where folks are coming from because they're in the system. They provided their addresses. We can do that. From a drop-in perspective, we can't because we don't ask for any information from anybody when they drop in, whether they were under a system where we had paid admission or free. So even in a paid admission, folks just pay and enter. There's no questions about where folks live. There's no identifying information whatsoever captured. So unless folks have passes where they're registered in the system or they're using lessons. So we could look back at data from, and we can look at current data for registrations around usage. But I would suggest that from our public engagement, we have strong representation from across the region that's reflective of the population across the region. And that's consistent across 3 rounds of public engagement. We haven't seen sort of significant shifts one way or the other across electoral areas, Comox, Courtenay, or Cumberland amongst 3 different public engagements. So I would suggest that would be a pretty healthy representation. And we also have questions in there around people's usage patterns of the outdoor pool and can cross relate that to where they live. So we can also bring that kind of back to light if that's helpful.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moran and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering from staff what our best guess is on how imminent system failure is with this asset. And I mean, I have a hard time imagining that the Recreation Commission is going to jump all over this and say, yeah, we'll agree to fund it as a top priority and get moving on it right away. And I know when we agreed to go ahead with it before, I think the consensus around the table was that that would have to be conditional on regional financing. It's pretty clear to me that the city can't afford to do this by itself. And whether the region can afford to do it is going to be up to that regional table. But it seems to me that we're going to be kicking this one around for a while longer, as we have for probably 6 years now. From about the first time we were told it was imminently going to fail. So what's our best guess now on how long we can kind of limp along and you know, put Band-Aids and duct tape on the pool to get it ready for another season?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, I wish I had a crystal ball. We have spent significant funding and time on making repairs to the pool over the last couple of years. So, and that probably extended its life by a couple of years, either through system improvements or addressing regulatory requirements from Island Health. So we sort of have 3 main I guess, considerations. Island Health has been very clear that they expect the city to come up with a plan for the future of the pool to address its current state. And without a plan, they would be looking to us to close the pool. So it is, they've been very clear on that. That's the reason the city decided to close the wading pool, was that it wasn't, we weren't going to continue to invest in it at that time and would wait for a decision on the future of the outdoor pool. So we continue to address issues as they come up with Island Health. And again, we had a clean inspection record, but they're also expecting that that there is a plan for its replacement because its current state doesn't meet all of the current health requirements. So that's a bit of an unknown, and we're at the sort of behest of Island Health. The team continues to maintain the systems as best they can, but every year we're facing decisions around investment. So, you know, the filter has been repaired, but is well past its end of life. And at some point we'll have to make a decision about whether we invest in replacing that filter or if we close the pool. And those are substantial financial decisions. So from a planned perspective, it's going to be a cost benefit analysis. What needs to be repaired? How much does it cost? And is the city willing to spend that money? And then of course we bring that decision to council if it's meeting a certain threshold. I'm more worried about the unplanned service disruptions where a system fails and we're just unable to resolve it, or again, the cost impacts. I'm hopeful another year or 2. I think 80 years would be a pretty substantial milestone for a facility, and that's only 3 years away. So I can't imagine we're much more than a couple of years before staff would recommend that it's time to close the pool before more significant financial repairs or financial commitments are needed.
Thanks. And my other question is, I mean, what incentive would there be for the region to borrow the money to finance it and not want to run it? Do we have any other examples of that as a model?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, there's many examples, I think, across regions where regions fund and own assets and enter into service agreements with service partners, whether those are local governments or other service providers. So I think that's a common practice. I think it's really a question for the commission and the regional district to consider whether they see the operation of the outdoor pool as a part of their aquatic service, or they're more content to have the service be continue to be delivered by the city of Courtenay. I think that's also a decision that, while a decision could be made to have the city continue to operate it at this point, it's something that could of course could transfer in the future if that was a determined path.
Thanks. Mr. Carver?
If I may, thank you through the mayor. This question of what's in the incentive or why would they, that's a fundamental recreation question. And so ultimately, regional districts, as my colleague has said, they are set up to be infinitely flexible. That's why they were created. And there are lots of examples across the province of financing and operations. They're been uniquely created actually for that purpose. They have different borrowing authorities than municipalities. We engage directly with the Capital Regional District, who does a lot of this stuff on another matter. But with respect to the future operations items, our council has talked to us about making sure we're efficient in operations and the like. So ultimately, we have operated in a certain way for approaching 80 years. That would be incredible to get to that point. But it's imperative that we do look at that. And I think within our region, that's the purpose of a lot of these service reviews that undertake and the like. But we can't really predict the future in terms of the best way to operate these items. And again, across British Columbia, inside regional districts, there are lots of examples of these kinds of joint operations or individual operations. And I'm not sure that there's a norm.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Yeah, so some duct tape and chewing gum for a little bit. And I know our staff do way better than that to keep people safe. So Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A few thoughts on this. Really did appreciate the attachment to the report that went through quite a comprehensive analysis of the options in front of us. Laying out the advantages and disadvantages. I think that's really helpful in the consideration. I feel less strongly around the city operating the pool, mostly in the medium to long term, given my exposure to the Comox Valley aquatic strategy. And just from my cursory review of other areas in the province, I think we might be a little bit of a unique community in that we have two different levels or two different governments within a region operating aquatic services. So moving over the service to the CVRD, I think likely makes sense given that they operate the other aquatic facilities. And there is a longer term aquatic strategy that speaks to the addition of a 25-meter additional pool in the medium to long term in that strategy. I guess the only question I have, because really everything is answered in the analysis and the attachment for me, is really how we navigate our relationship with the commission pending tonight's decision. And that is if, for me, for example, like if the commission comes back and says, you know, we'll consider borrowing it, we'll consider building it, but we actually want to be able to operate it. Like I feel less attached with coming with a full, this is what the city of Courtenay sees with the answers to your three questions that you've positioned quite articulately tonight. And for me, more so, I think I'm very clear that my preference would be to go to the commission to request their support around borrowing. I feel less strongly around the build and operating piece, and I would look to the commission around their opinion on that. I think you make a really good case, and I agree that the transference of a capital project from one organization like the city to another does delay a project and does cause some challenges. And of course, there's some operating challenges highlighted in the analysis as well. I don't think any of them are insurmountable. But I guess my comment is really, you know, I hope that if we move forward with this tonight, that we are open to hearing from the commission. If they come back with yes, we'll support you with the borrowing, but we disagree on the other two. That I know that I'll be staying open to hearing from the commission on that. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. And I think, you know, when we look at the broader community, there is that third pool operator at the base. So, you know, there's still, and those conversations are happening through their expansions and how presently it's kind of open to people, but they're looking at, you know, what that means as their population grows and how that might become limited. So anyways, it's been a great conversation. And I'm wondering if somebody would like to move.
I guess a couple more comments. Yeah, I think we've heard from the base that they don't have capacity. I mean, we've been trying to get, you know, I think the rec commission has been trying to have partnerships, but they don't have capacity with their rink or their pool. So with more people coming, they'd have to, unless they want to build the pool.
Or help pay for
a new pool. I was curious whether we have any, I guess, more detail around the cost with each scenario, like to the Courtenay taxpayers. Do we have any of that stuff sorted out?
Through, maybe buy
For
some
the
time
different
for
options?
Mr. Langmeyer. When we went to public engagement through the Mayor Council Morin on the options analysis, we did provide a range of tax impacts for Courtenay residents should Courtenay take on the borrowing solely versus if the regional district takes it on. And I don't know if Mr. Langmeyer is able to pull those
I
up
could
while we're
have asked that
while we're
question
talking.
before.
The other thing I'll just offer, maybe while he's doing that, and it speaks a bit to Councillor Hillian's question about the regional district's sort of interest in prioritizing this project. I think it's important to remember that the Comox Valley Aquatic Strategy was done through the Comox Valley Recreation Commission and the City of Courtenay in partnership. And the aquatic strategy, which both parties adopted and endorsed, includes the outdoor pool in that strategy. And the direction and decision at the time was that the regional district would plan for the indoor facilities and Courtenay would plan for the outdoor. We would do those concurrently. And staff at both tables are very aware and up to speed on those processes. And then at one point, those processes would merge. The commission and through staff at the regional district were very clear they needed direction from Courtenay. Courtenay needed to make a decision on the future of its outdoor pool and feed that into the regional district from that aquatic strategy perspective. So I think it is important to remember that this isn't a standalone project. It's not one the city has done in isolation. It's one that's been a part of the aquatic strategy that was endorsed by both parties. And we've been doing our planning concurrently with the regional district around their infrastructure. And at this point, it's a convergence. And so the ask of the regional district that's recommended is to now bring those together. And it would be up to the commission to determine where that fits. But it is clearly articulated in the aquatic strategy as a key community asset that should be retained. They contemplated different ways of retaining that service. And that's why we went to public engagement after the aquatic strategy to ask the public what their opinions were on maintaining the outdoor pool, what that looked like, where it should be, and that's led us down this path.
Yeah, thanks. Just the last comment. Yeah, thank you for reiterating that because you know, there was feedback loud and clear and there was feedback around keeping the outdoor pool and definitely not co-locating it. And there was also a lot of recognition about how this is a very unique asset. You know, not all communities have an outdoor pool. When if it's gone, it's gone, and maybe that's what ends up happening. But we are in a different position where we have a unique asset that, as you say, fits in with that whole kind of corridor down there, rec services, and then with Sims Park and everything else tied in. So yeah, I think those are important considerations for the decision making. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Morin and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. Just the Councillor Moran's question was just drawing me back into the staff report, and it does say that if Courtenay were to do this alone, the 32 million of the annual debt servicing costs, and these are rough, is 2.2 million, which is a more than 6% tax increase just on its own, just for the loan, assuming the cost doesn't go up, and it doesn't talk about increased operating costs. And I think the report also mentions that almost half of the respondents in each of the surveys have come from outside Courtenay, from other parts of the valley, which indicates to me that it's a valley-wide asset. Just like the aquatic center is in Courtenay, but it's a valley-wide asset. But it's also a result of those two things. Like for me, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, if we're not able to see regional support for this, this is not something that the people of Courtenay could or should be trying to support. And while I understand there was a high level of support for it, I think without that really concrete level of exactly what that would mean in terms of cost to the city, in terms of other projects of importance that we wouldn't be able to complete, it just doesn't seem like a financially responsible move. So I'm hoping the regional district will see that it's a regional asset and step up, but we'll just have to see how that plays. And is the recommendation being moved? If not, I'm happy to do that. I'll move the recommendation to send it to the regional district.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for articulating. I mean, I think that's my recollection of our conversations in the past, is that this is a big ticket item, and the reason why we're doing this work is because the regional district is doing similar work in parallel, and now this is going to get dovetailed back to them with the expressed interest that the funding be spread across the entire Comox Valley. So with that, if there's no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Moving to 5.3.2, the Community Social Development Midterm Report. And I think Joanne Bays is going to present us with that.
Thank you, Mayor, through Council. It's my pleasure to present to you tonight. I'm here with Isha Matuis-Gibbs, who's with Urban Matters, who's prepared a midterm report on our community and social development work, which was entailed the Better Together strategy and the neighborhood networks pilot. So she'll be talking about that and how our community social development framework is coming out. So the purpose tonight is, just to provide that report, and we'll follow up after. So Isha.
Cool. If you just push the button and you're good.
Thank you very much. Happy to be back in front of council today with something a little more positive than what I'm normally here for. So thank you for having me. Do I also have control?
Yes.
Excellent. So hi, Isha Matuis-Gibbs. I've been the supporting consultant working with Joanne on the Better Together strategy. This has been an initiative of the city under the Recreation, Culture and Community Services Department, led by your Community Development Coordinator. Better Together is working alongside the Neighborhood Network strategy, and I'm here to report back on both strategies, what has been done so far, what's emerging as a result of that work, and how these emerging ideas are informing a framework for community social development in Courtenay. So I'll start with what is community social development. So it's a collaborative process where members of a community work together to take collective action, solve common problems, and improve their overall well-being. It focuses on building resilient, equitable societies by empowering individuals, removing systemic barriers, and enhancing social connections and institutions. It integrates two very closely related ideas of community development, the collective action and organizational aspect, and social development, which is the well-being and equity piece. And rather than a top-down approach, which demands significant control and resources from an authority or organizational body, it is a grassroots and collective approach that looks to empower people and partners together as equals. In plain language, this work pursues the question, how do we create the conditions for people, organizations, and governments to act together on things that shape daily life. This approach connects directly to the City of Courtenay's official community plan, and I would posit is one of the ways in which the city is pursuing the foundational values of the official community plan. We all know that the OCP names 4 cardinal directions: community well-being, climate action, resilience, and equity. The official community plan also uses the determinants of health lens to remind us that well-being is shaped by many parts of community life, such as where people live, how they move around, whether or not they can access food, the recreation, the green space, culture, connection, and whether they feel included and able to participate in the community around them. Community social development helps put all of those directions and vision into practice by building the conditions needed for community resilience. It focuses on the relationship building and coordination that happens in between the formal engagement moments. It brings partners in community efforts. It listens deeply to local knowledge and supports resident leadership. And it helps build collective action over time. So the city is essentially testing this approach through the Better Together and Neighborhood Networks projects. It's being explored through, as I said, Better Together and the Neighborhood Networks. Better Together works at the partner and system level. It brings organizations, institutions, service providers, leaders, and local government together to ask, what is already happening? Where are the gaps? Where are we duplicating effort? And where could coordinated action make the biggest difference? Where is the most efficient and effective place to invest our shared resources, time, and energy? Neighborhood Networks, conversely, works at the resident and neighbor level. It supports people to build connections and take action in the places where they live, being residents and people living in our city, through into building and creating, co-creating the environments they're in. And with modest support from the city through coordination, facilitation, communication tools, and seed funding, several successful projects. Together, these are testing what community social development can look like in practice at the systems level and on the ground in neighborhoods. I'll talk a little bit about what Better Together, what that did, some of the activities around that, and some of the key learnings that came with it. And then I'll give a little overview of the neighborhood projects and then some reflections on the entire process. So through Better Together, partners came together and over the past year, there were a series of gatherings as well as a systems mapping process. The mapping was a really interesting research project that actually mapped 24 plans and related materials from 21 organizations. So trying to codify their strategic plans in terms of what levels of systems and what level of the determinants of health each of those actions were seeking to address. It looked at aspirations of our community organizations and groups engaged in this project with us. And it also looked at whether or not they're meeting immediate needs or making long-term system redesign part of their aspirations and goals. It was not meant to be a perfect inventory. It was a conversation tool. It launched us into self-reflection as a collective. And it helped make visible where effort is already happening. For example, we had really high numbers of actions in these plans related to equity and inclusion. And so we can see that that's a focus, a key focus of the organizations we're partnering with across the community. And then it also identified where there's areas that are less planned for or less focused on. What happened in the conversation is that when we all looked at this together, we realized that aspirations and day-to-day activities don't always match. That as a community, we have high goals and we're stuck oftentimes working in a responsive, crisis-based way, especially within social services. So now that we've created this map and had this conversation, it opened the door for collective reflection on what is getting in the way of implementing and creating the types of communities and ways that we want to work together. While the maps that we discussed were static, the tool lives on as an interactive digital inventory. it can actually be used in the future by any of the community partners or organizations interested in playing with it. And we're just figuring out the best way to make that available through something other than here's a link and a download for an app. So the key findings of the collective Better Together activities can be summarized as this. Partners do share a strong desire to work upstream, but urgent needs and crisis response can draw much of their capacity. And Courtenay as a community has so many assets to build from. There's more than 200 nonprofit organizations here. There's existing coalitions, strong relationships, and committed people. Better Together also reinforced that relationship and shared language are not an extra piece of the work. They are what make shared goals and shared action possible. And it clarified that the city has an important role, not by leading everything, but by convening, coordinating, and connecting people, aligning city tool community priorities, and helping partners work together more easily. Better Together also showed where the next phase needs to go deeper. Some sectors and voices are not fully represented in this work yet, including First Nations, people with lived and living experience, and people from the sector of education, environments, arts and culture, and newcomers. These gaps matter. A community social development will only be strong when it's finalized if it reflects the people affected by the conditions we're trying to change, and we know that there's more work to do to bring those partners in. That said, did Better Together achieve what it set out to do? At this midpoint of the work, yes, in the ways that matter for this stage of the work. Its purpose was to build those relationships and create the shared language, understand the local system more clearly, and identify opportunities for coordinated action. And by that measure, Better Together has made very strong progress toward its early aims. It brought partners into a shared process. It introduced ideas of systems mapping to surface assets, gaps, and opportunities, and helped clarify the city's role. It also, as I said, shows what still needed attention. But the evaluation of this work shows us that Better Together has laid really important groundwork for community social development in Courtenay. The next phase is building on that foundation with more focus and clarifying the shared priorities and practical steps that help partners in the city act together. Neighborhood networks is a direct and place-based form of community action. Neighborhood networks is a similar approach to Better Together, but at the neighborhood scale. With modest support over the last year, that support being a coordinator who hosted community building circles, provided some communication tools, and insert some seed funding, residents have created 4 pilot groups: Old Orchard in downtown, Middle Irk, Dogwood, Billmore Park, and Trumpeter's Landing. They've been mapping local assets, beginning their own neighborhood-led projects. And while the work is still underway and community organizations are in various stages, this work will be continuing into the fall, and final reporting and evaluation will happen at that time. However, early reports and assessment show that the learning is simple but important. People will lead local action when they have trust, time, and practical support. These communities needed a little bit of a lift, and people showed up in droves. As the project moves forward, it'll glean even more insight, like responding to some of the implementation challenges and the barriers encountered, including champion support, training, and timelines. And this will go into the city's longer-term approach to neighborhood-based community social development activities. In this way, the city neighborhood networks continue to strengthen direct community action, while also the city understand which levers most effectively support led change. Taken together, Better Together, and the neighborhood networks are helping build a clearer understanding of what this kind of work requires. It requires relationship before, it requires coordination, but also resident leadership. It requires attention to immediate needs, prevention, and longer-term systemic. It requires a different understanding of the city role. The city can play an enabling role. It can convene partners, hold the bigger picture. It can connect community priorities to city planning, policy, facilities, grants, and it can reduce barriers, create openings, and help align efforts over time. This work has given some clear directions for what comes next. Participation needs to broaden. The emerging framework needs to focus on a small number of shared priority areas, and rather than trying to do everything at once, which is hard when there's demands everywhere all at once, all the time. The work needs to move from shared understanding towards shared action. For Courtenay, the message is hopeful. Community social development depends on mutual ownership, and this work has shown that the community already has many of the ingredients needed for this work. The next step is to build on those strengths with more focus, more inclusion, and clearer shared action. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much for the update. Much appreciated. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks. Good to see you. The 4 neighborhoods were given small grants and worked with fairly extensively, and there's reference to 7 other neighborhoods that had some sort of outreach that took place. Do we have a sense of how geographically spread out they were? For example, are they all in West Courtenay, or are some of them in East Courtenay? Where are the neighborhoods that people were reaching out to look for engagement in this project?
Yeah, thank you very much. I might refer that question back to Joanne Bays, as I wasn't the coordinator for the neighborhood's activities and don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, it didn't just come from west or east. We had, if I did specifically the Dingwall area, there was the Sedgwick area. We've also had interest in the Courtenay area, but that's over on this side again. We have had interest up in Crown Isle, so it's been quite spread. And we've had interest from outside of Courtenay, the regional district areas. So we've had people calling, and we've provided them, minimally with some resources and other connections, because we didn't have the capacity to formally, start others. But yeah, so we've had it from outside of Courtenay and also in different areas.
And could you give us a bit of a brief summary of what sort of issues were prompting people in those neighborhoods to reach out and to want to engage with this project?
Yeah, sorry. Through council, through mayor to Councillor Hillian. Really what they were looking for, they're excited by what we're doing, and they want to know how. How do I start this? I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it. Obviously, one of the things that are going to, I think, go forward is a training program. Like, we would offer some kind of training program for people who want to be champions in their neighborhoods. And, so that is a possibility on the table. Many neighborhood networks across the country do that. So that's it. They just want the skills. How do I start? We've also been just connecting them up with champions who are learning. So yeah, it's evolving. Yeah, but mostly it's how do I start?
Mm-hmm. That's actually really encouraging to hear that there are people in different parts of our community that are interested in working with their neighbors, whether on projects in their neighborhood or some sort of endeavor that that helps to build the community. Thanks for that.
Okay.
And Ms. Saunders.
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Hillian. Just to build on Ms. Bay's comments around the neighborhood networks and your question about why people are interested. There were a couple of folks, I think, who became interested because of maybe concerns or particular issues in their community that had maybe brought them together for other reasons, and sort of they'd already almost formed a neighborhood network around an issue or a question. But I'd say the majority of folks are coming forward from that social development perspective, really wanting to know their neighbors, build a sense of place, connection, so sort of really pro-social reasons, and quite sort of like entry-level spaces too, not looking to make substantial change in their community, but looking to just build connections, build a sense of place and build their community. And so, and I think the report articulates, staff contemplated the best way to go about identifying neighborhoods. And I think at this point, the strategy we chose was what we describe as sort of a snowball, where we put the out there and we let folks resonate with it and put their hands up, because at this stage of the project, it really relies on folks who are interested in taking a leadership role and taking on some responsibility, working with us as we learn. And so we, in that sense, it was really up to neighborhoods to self-select. I think if this program is to continue, we'd provide some guide on how we would actually select how we allocate resources to neighborhoods. But in the beginning, it's most important to actually have some capacity in the neighborhood to start the initiatives and work through building the network and then build from there.
Excellent. And we did the proclamation at the beginning of the meeting today about Hello Neighbor 18th, and these cards in the back room there. Maybe I'll go over to, I thought Councillor Jolicoeur was next. How did that happen? Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks. And thanks, Isha, for being here. 92 pages, really great. And no, but genuinely really helpful to see some of the anecdotes, pulled some quotes and examples of early collaborations, which I think is really tangible for us onto. I was actually, and surprise, because I'm asking about this throughout this process, because, and you map it out in the report. And I think this is, after 4 years on council and multiple political conferences, I don't know of any municipality that's entirely getting the two-eyed seeing approach really well, both at a systemic level, but also really at the tangible policy level as well. And you've articulated it a few times in the report as a key learning and I think value that we heard from the partners at the table for the Better Together strategy. And so I'm wondering, given your expertise across the province in working with this, and you did highlight like we're doing actually quite well as a community. If you see, because one of the questions in the long term for Better Together is really the positionality of the city. And we, of course, have an item on our work plan for a reconciliation strategy that's ongoing. We're working on that in a variety of ways. But I'm wondering if you can kind of just speak more broadly, any kind of quick wins that you might see us being able to apply as we kind of wade through that work with, of course, with Comox First Nation, but also with other urban and Indigenous partners and the charter community locally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, and through the mayor to you, Councillor Jolicoeur. Courtenay and the Comox Valley are this like unique little hot pot around community social development. I've worked in communities across the province, as mentioned, and of course have deep connections and relationships here. And everyone who comes to work here, and myself having observed other places, I always say there's something magic here, there's something special. And it's really the commitment of various levels of social services, education, municipalities, local governments, everyone looking always towards that. What is the systems change? What is the ethical space that we're leaning into? And I think that shows up in the commitments to reconciliation, as non-government organizations, our service providers are looking at how to decolonize practices, how to build in two-eyed seeing and other reconciliatory ways and cultural safety into their work. And I don't know if there's a better or, like I don't want to grade anyone. But I think that the activities and the actions of local governments to step into that space consistently has been is sort of unique. I think there's also some unique context in the stage of treaty process that Comox is in, and that has some different implications for government to government relationships, of course. As far as the reference to two-eyed seeing, I think, the capacity of Indigenous organizations and peoples to participate in this work is an identified challenge, right? And capacity funding or finding other ways of working. I know tight timelines is always an issue, right? We can give a month notice for a gathering, and that still doesn't mean that everyone's going to be able to make it. And so I think there is continued work. And what the two-eyed seeing references to is that the way, or at least the way I see it, is there is still so much we can do to decolonize our approach to take action towards cultural safety and well-being without having to have Indigenous people lead that all the time. And so that two-eyed seeing is about embedding that approach in how we show up, and then hopefully that open space at the table.
Yeah.
Does that?
That does, yeah, thank
Okay.
you. I do have another question, but I can get back in line.
There's
Yeah,
a few other,
great.
like, so. There we go.
Thank you. Thanks for the report and all the work on this. At the end, where it talks about the primary objectives that were reached, all super encouraging. And you talked about, obviously this is a strength and asset-based approach rather than a reactive sort of crisis-based approach, and that's sort of what we were looking for when council brought this forward, was to I guess mitigate being in that problem, always sort of reacting to social problems and things like that. So I really appreciate all the outcomes, and all the anecdotal information was great about the personal impacts that people had. Like, if it's one person that feels less isolated or more connected or gets help with something they need help with, then that's a success. I guess I'm curious about, I mean, in the Better Together piece, you talked about the groups that we didn't necessarily reach yet, but I'm wondering more about in the neighborhoods. My first question is around, was there a certain kind of profile of people that, because there are the keeners or the joiners or the people that love this kind of stuff, but I'm curious whether we got to people that maybe that isn't their comfort zone, that somehow stumbled upon this. So kind of, and even in terms of socioeconomic background or other things, did we get as much diversity as we hoped for? I guess is one question that I have. And then I guess the second piece goes down to the first point I made, which is how do we envision taking this to the level of actually mitigating some of those social problems, and knowing that we're a small municipality and we need all kinds of higher government to help us with the big complex stuff, but how do we envision this, I guess, taking that next step?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can't speak directly to the diversity of the participants themselves. I don't have that data. We're just partway through the neighborhoods, and some of them are only launching their programs, right? So we don't have a full list of everyone who joined in the activities. I think you make a really excellent point. There's always the keeners, the people who lean into this and take up the mantle quite quickly and early on. And part of the snowball method of recruitment that Joanne referenced is that naturally you attract keeners. So that said, this is a pilot. This is about making those relationships, introducing the social development and community social development concepts into community, starting to build momentum around that, and inviting people in. The thing with keeners is they always bring other people with them, right? And so it will expand like that. And the way I see this personally moving forward is, now that this pilot has happened, now there's an opportunity to sort of formalize it and put out, announce grants or provide those opportunities in other ways that ultimately will have a wider reach, and then there can be more outreach strategies for specific groups if demographic reports are showing that we're missing someone or a particular area.
Thank you.
So thanks for that. And back to Councillor Zolker.
Thanks. My question around the network. Oh,
Did you want to add something in, Ms. Saunders? Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Moore, just to answer your second question about addressing some of the social issues. And I think we're hearing two things through the Better Together work. The response to what's currently happening, that frontline crisis response is all consuming for everyone and absolutely requires, as this council has been very clear, provincial and federal response and coordinated action. And so Better Together can look at ways to coordinate our action and support partners in this work, but it's not going to necessarily, it's not going to solve the crisis in front of us. What the Better Together work and the neighborhood networks projects intend to do is develop the preventative upstream work that reduces these problems from occurring in the future. So when we have neighborhoods where individuals feel connected, feel that they have relationships, that they know people that they can reach out to, that people are looking out for them, where we have kids who have adults in their lives who know their names, we know that research connects that to a reduction in youth homelessness, youth crime, substance use, et cetera. And so those are hard to measure direct causal effects, but we know from research that those pro-social preventative upstream actions and community belonging, well-being, and connection are those antidotes to those long-term social challenges that we're seeing in front of us right now. And of course, they're extremely complex. But that's the root of this work, is to work in that long-term vision of making changes now that prevent some of those social issues in the future, and looking at it from a systems level as well, of what can we shift in the system that results in less people falling into the system that's not working or not catching them.
And thanks for that. And Ms. Bays, sorry, Councillor Schulaker.
Thanks, Mayor.
Ms. Bays also had a comment.
Okay.
I was just apologizing because I jumped the gun and there's another person in front of you now. But
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Ms. Saunders' comments. In my experience, and with Better Together as well, we brought together a lot of the champions of the who are working in the different determinant areas, who are mostly social, and they are, a lot of them, in the crisis plays. And we recognized in our doing this that, oh, we're missing some other determinant areas. But you know what you're missing from a community development perspective? We're enough change agents. You needed the people, and you needed the people who weren't working on the front lines to be in that room, right? So it was that's the key. The key, build the relationships. These people, and we're talking about making systems change, and they're going, I can't even dream about that. So with them, it's just like, okay, how can we support you? And what's one little thing we can maybe move the needle a little? But then we need to bring in our bigger community, the people who have moved here, who want to roll up their sleeves and say, how do I volunteer? How can I do that? Right? We need to bring them in, and we need change agents in that room to mobilize them to do some of that upstream work. So this is very preliminary. We've did a great job building relationships and coalescing and talking about how we want to work together. But we're right at the precipice where we got to bring in those change agents now. And that's the piece. That's the piece next, as well as flatten the power structures so that we have the two-eyed seeing, but we need those other people in the room.
excellent. Thanks for the tag team on that answer. And finally, Councillor Schulaker again, I apologize.
Thanks, Mayor. Neighborhood networks, the staff report speaks to it finishing in November 2026. But I recall that this whole community development strategy was until 2027. So seeing that there's such a success and there's keeners and people are really just forming their values and what they want to be doing, and the communication channels, like you've highlighted some of the initial wins for those groups, feels like are they still able to meet without us? I just wouldn't want to close the door on something that we've opened. And so I'm trying to wrap my head, because the framework goes until 2027, but we're saying it ends in November 2026. So maybe you can clarify that for me. I'll probably have a follow-up.
Can I? Oh, okay. Yeah. Mayor to Councillor Yolker. Yes, no, they're not going to end in November. The pilot piece, the evaluation piece will wrap up in November, but those networks are not going to wrap up at the end of November. They're just starting. They're just meeting each other, and now they're at, okay, got our social connections here. We got our communications going. Let's do some placemaking. Okay, so they want to move to the next thing. But what we're going to do between now and November with those groups who are in the pilot is develop a sustainability plan. So, you know, you've got your communication networks, you got your core stable enough to where you're going. And I can imagine, you know, we need direction to continue on with this, but I can imagine that there will be networks of networks that happen. And they tell me loud and clear, some of them, that we're not going anywhere.
That's very helpful that it's because the language is final report and final event. So I just wanted to make sure it's finality of the pilots.
Of the pilots, yes.
Simply that. So my follow-up, if I can, Mayor, is the neighborhood network, it appears to be really focused on the forming of the groups themselves. But I do recall in the initial stages of us approving and moving this work forward was also within the context of how do we do a better job of engaging with community and kind of a two-way street rather than having these groups just being in those groups and talking about what they need amongst themselves, but also how can the city's initiatives be influenced by these groups. And I think about the work that we are starting in maybe this week or next week around Anderton and the Dike and the Old Orchard neighborhood group, and how that's a really easy group that we can go to and say, hey, give us your thoughts on what you might see as a future design for this space. And so kind of the city coming to them with things, because it appears like it's mostly we're supporting them to form right now. So is there any thinking around how that might look, or if that's something that those groups are interested in?
Oh, right. I almost had it. There we go.
My God. Okay. Sorry. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They've got our attention, and they're reaching out to get more of that. They all have the communication channels. So we are definitely feeding into those communication channels, our different surveys and our different ways that they can engage. And you're right, Old Orchard is very interested in having a word about the Riverside Park. But we also have connected them up through recreation with our Parks Alive. And it's just so, I'm a bridge. I'm a bridge between the city and the neighborhood networks, well, between myself and the coordinator right now, right? But there is this two-way conversation going, and I can see that we're probably going to have to develop some kind of landing page with guidelines, how you kind of move through different questions you might have. And yeah, once we get a network of leads that we can talk to when we're doing our planning, we would have that community voice in there, the actual neighborhoods of those local area plans that we're thinking of doing. So.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. At one point, I think there was talk of providing funding for groups to do sort of events and, you know, community type building stuff. Do you still see that as something up and coming, or have you already been doing stuff like that? Has there been funding provided to these groups to do their networking?
Yes, through Mayor to Councillor Fish. Yeah, we have. It's been like a whirlwind. We only started up these neighborhood networks this year, and we figured out a little grant program for them. So they all applied, and we've got a process going around getting grants. They're tiny little grants, like $1,500 for social, and then $3,000 for a placemaking. But nobody was sort of at placemaking stage yet. Now they are. So we did develop a little process, and we're evaluating those grants. Like, are we the best ones to be giving them? You know, like what kind of input? Yeah, so there'll be some evaluation of that. And I would see that as it's been really positive, like the outcome. So I could see that being a package as I talk about training. Would be something that we want to go forward with champions. a package around the grants, like having some kind of little grant program, whether we do it or Comox Valley Community Foundation. But yeah, we're figuring it out. It's evolving. And so it's a pilot. Yeah.
It sounds really great. If there are no other questions, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Thanks again. Great report. Really appreciate it. Moving on to council resolutions. There are 2 resolutions by the mayor. If somebody's okay to move them on my behalf, then excellent. First one on BC Ferries. That one's been moved and seconded. I believe, well, we had the notice motion. I don't believe I was here for that. Are there any questions on the BC Ferries ones at all? Really, it's just supporting and amplifying the work of our MP Gord Johns and the good work that he's been doing around the subsidies. With that, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then the motion. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And we're moving into bylaws. First, second, and third readings. We have the cemetery bylaw. And are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And for adoption, we have the loan authorization bylaw 3213 for 2026 Braidwood. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Moving on to loan authorization bylaw 3214 2026 for Ryan Road sidewalk. All right, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And loan authorization bylaw 3215 2026, the East Side Fire Hall. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Councillor Morin.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I know this is for adoption. We're already at the end of the process here, but just wanted to say enjoyed attending the ground breaking, which is just maybe a week or 2 before the ground is actually broken. But although this authorizes, has an amount authorized, I think we're still hopeful that it will not, we will not be, the amount has come, this amount has come down from the original amount, and we're still hopeful that it's going to be under. Is that still fair to say?
I saw Chris,
Yeah.
Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. Yeah, we'll provide an update to council. It's very positive, and it goes to the design and development work that we're utilizing for our procurement. And we're really happy to see those trends. And it was positive on other projects, and we hope to continue to see that going forward.
That's great. And we
Yeah.
have had some things under budget lately, and just for people that may not know, we did, our team did adjust the design to a more economical version of this fire hall. So very appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there may be a potential for some grant funding as well, but again, all that'll come back to council as time moves on. So thanks for those comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. Next, we have 7.2.4 zoning amendment bylaw 3218 for 2026 for 1885 Cliff Avenue. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. 7.2.5 refuse materials collection, removal and regulation repeal bylaw number. All right, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And on this next one, I will be recusing myself for the 2535 Cumberland Road. There's a chance that I will be doing some work with Montero on a personal basis, and therefore I'll recuse myself.
No, no. All right, so just I'll take over as acting mayor for this one piece of business, the recommendation on the screen. That's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Anyone opposed? And that carries. And I guess I'll go get the mayor.
All that. I was having a snack. Thanks so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for stepping in. Moving along. Subdivision Development Servicing Bylaw 3234. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, and motion carries. 7.2.8, the Housing Agreement Repeal Bylaw 3235. All right, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, and motion carries. And Parks and Open Spaces Regulation Amendment Bylaw 3236. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, and motion carries. And we'll jump into council reports, starting with Councillor Jolicoeur, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Cole Hamilton, Councillor Frisch, Councillor Morin. Yes, it was a busy month. Councillor Hillian.
I just want to congratulate city staff on an excellent July 1st. And I also want to give my compliments to our engineering department for the completion of the 6th Street Bridge and the opening ceremony, which was also excellent and well attended by many, many people who were overjoyed to see that fine facility as an amenity for our city for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hillian, not just for knocking two of my things off my list, but yeah, Canada Day was definitely just all around great. And, you know, one of the big things council does every year is cut the cake. And there were volunteers, there were staff, and I would say it was the best cake cutting. When you're giving out, I believe, well over 700 pieces of cake within about 20 minutes. It was organized chaos, but in a very good way. So I just want to thank all of council, staff, and volunteers. Also just want to comment on the Couscous Summit had a celebration for volunteers and donors. And I think many councillors were there. So just want to recognize the great event there. Councillor Morton talked about the fire hall kickoff that we did last night. Again, many years in the planning. And again, want to thank all the staff and the patience of those volunteer firefighters, and really looking forward to the increased firefighting capacities. And lastly, today, one of the greatest amenities of regional district level, but I got to attend the Kapoji opening. And again, a great ceremony brought together by Comox First Nation members, as well as the regional district, and just an amazing facility. And with that, we are adjourned.